Lena Harper's lips were still tingling from the kiss when the man's hand locked around her wrist. "You don't walk away from me," Victor Moretti said, his voice dangerously soft. Around them, the penthouse party fell silent. She'd kissed him on a dare, $50 and too much champagne courage. But the way his dark eyes pinned her in place told her she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. Or maybe not a mistake at all. Because despite every survival instinct screaming at her to run, Lena found herself leaning closer, whispering, "Then don't let me go." Before we dive into Lena's story, if you're loving this already, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now, let's see how a single dare changed everything. Imam. The party was a mistake from the beginning. Lena Harper stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, nursing her third glass of champagne and wondering how she'd ended up 40 stories above the city in a room full of people who probably spent more on their watches than she did on tuition. Her friend Monica had dragged her here. Networking, she'd called it, though Lena suspected it was more about Monica's relentless pursuit of Manhattan's elite social scene. "You need to loosen up," Monica had said earlier, pressing the champagne flute into Lena's hand. "Not everything has to be about studying and working doubles at that diner. Live a little." Lena had tried. She'd smiled politely at strangers who spoke in casual references to vacation homes and private jets. She'd nodded along to conversations about art galleries and charity galas, feeling increasingly like an anthropologist studying a foreign culture. At 23, she should have felt young and free, but instead she felt like she was playing dress-up in Monica's borrowed designer dress, pretending to belong somewhere she clearly didn't. The champagne helped. It dulled the sharp edges of her self-consciousness, made the glittering city lights below blur into something almost magical, but it also made her reckless. "I dare you," Monica said, appearing at her elbow with that mischievous gleam Lena had learned to fear over 2 years of friendship. "See that guy by the bar? The one in the black suit?" Lena followed her gaze across the expansive living room. Even in a room full of wealthy, well-dressed men, he stood out. Tall, probably 6'2" or 6'3", with dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble. He held a glass of what looked like whiskey, but he wasn't drinking, just watching the room with an intensity that made Lena's skin prickle even from this distance. "What about him?" Lena asked, though something in her chest had already tightened. $50 if you go over there and kiss him." Lena nearly choked on her champagne. "Are you insane?" "I'm serious." Monica pulled out her phone, opening her payment app. $50, right now. All you have to do is walk over there and plant one on him. Consider it payment for being dragged to this party. "Monica, I can't just—" "Why not? You're always saying you need to be more spontaneous, more daring. Well, here's your chance." Monica's eyes danced with challenge. "Unless you're scared." It was the champagne that made Lena say yes. Or maybe it was the weight of being 23 and safe, always the responsible one who worked 2 jobs and studied until her eyes burned and never, ever did anything remotely unpredictable. Maybe it was the way the city lights seemed to promise something more than her small apartment and endless shifts in the careful, controlled life she'd built. Or maybe it was the way the stranger's eyes had flickered to her for just a second, dark and assessing, before returning to his drink. "Fine," Lena heard herself say. $50. Monica squealed and immediately transferred the money. "Oh my God, I can't believe you're actually doing this. Wait, let me record." "Absolutely not," Lena said firmly, already regretting her decision but too stubborn to back down now. She drained the rest of her champagne, set the glass on a nearby table, and started across the room before she could think better of it. The crowd seemed to part for her, or maybe that was just the champagne making everything feel cinematic and surreal. She was aware of her borrowed heels clicking against the hardwood floor, of the way her heart hammered against her ribs, of the exact moment when the stranger's attention shifted fully to her. His eyes were darker than she'd thought. Not just brown, but nearly black, intense and unreadable. He tracked her approach with the stillness of a predator watching prey, and Lena felt her courage waver. This was stupid. This was monumentally stupid. She should turn around right now But she was already there, standing close enough to smell his cologne, something expensive and smoky. Close enough to see the faint scar that traced his left eyebrow, close enough to notice that he hadn't moved at all, just waited. "Hi," she said, and her voice came out breathier than she'd intended. "I'm going to kiss you now, for a dare. Is that okay?" It was the champagne talking. Sober Lena would never have asked permission. Sober Lena would never have done any of this. Something flickered in those dark eyes. Amusement, maybe, or interest. "A dare," he repeated, his voice low and rough, with an edge that made her shiver. "How much?" $50. "Cheap," he said, and set down his drink. "Go ahead then. Earn your money." Lena's face burned, but she'd come this far. She rose up on her toes. He was even taller up close, placed one hand on his chest for balance, and pressed her lips to his. It was supposed to be quick. A peck, maybe 5 seconds tops, just enough to win the dare and retreat with her dignity somewhat intact. But the moment their mouths met, something shifted. He didn't move at first, just let her kiss him, but then his hand came up to cup the back of her head, fingers threading through her hair, and he took control. The kiss deepened, his other hand settling on her waist, pulling her closer, and Lena felt the world tilt on its axis. This wasn't a dare anymore. This was something else entirely. His mouth moved over hers with confident expertise, coaxing her lips apart, tasting like whiskey and danger, and something she couldn't name. Heat flooded through her, pooling low in her belly, making her fingers curl into the expensive fabric of his suit jacket. She forgot about Monica, forgot about the $50, forgot about everything except the way he kissed her like he was claiming something that already belonged to him. When he finally pulled back, Lena's lungs were burning and her knees felt weak. His hand was still in her hair, holding her steady, and his eyes were even darker than before. "Interesting," he murmured, his thumb brushing against her jawline. "What's your name?" "Lena," she whispered, still trying to remember how to breathe. "Lena Harper." Victor Moretti. His gaze traveled over her face, studying her with that same predatory intensity. That was quite a dare, Lena Harper. She should step back, should laugh it off, thank him for being a good sport, and retreat to Monica's side. Should absolutely not be standing here still, with his hand in her hair and her heart racing like she'd just run a marathon. "I should," she started, but his grip tightened slightly. "You should stay," Victor said, and it wasn't quite a command, but it wasn't a request either. "Dance with me." "I don't." That wasn't a question. Lena's breath caught. There was something in his tone, in the way he looked at her, that made her pulse jump. This man was dangerous. Every instinct she had was screaming that at her. But instead of fear, she felt a thrill of something electric and reckless. "One dance," she heard herself say. Victor's mouth curved into something that might have been a smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. He released her hair but took her hand instead, leading her toward the section of the living room where several couples were already swaying to the low, sultry music. His hand settled at the small of her back, possessive and warm through the thin fabric of her dress. Lena placed her palm on his shoulder, very aware of the solid muscle beneath the expensive suit, of the way he pulled her closer than was strictly appropriate for a first dance. "So," she said, trying to sound casual and failing spectacularly, "do you always let strange women kiss you at parties?" "You're the first." His fingers splayed wider on her back, guiding her into the rhythm of the song. "Do you always kiss strangers for money?" "Also a first," Lena admitted, feeling her face heat. "My friend dared me. I don't usually, this isn't something I normally do." "I know." She looked up at him, startled. "How would you know?" "Because you asked permission first," Victor said, his dark eyes holding hers. "And because you're nervous. Your pulse is racing." His thumb brushed against her wrist where he held her hand, right over the telltale flutter of her heartbeat. "Also, you don't belong here." Lena stiffened. "Excuse me?" "It's not an insult," he said calmly. "Just an observation. You've been standing by the windows all night looking like you'd rather be anywhere else. Your dress doesn't quite fit right. Borrowed, I'm guessing. And you keep checking your phone like you're expecting someone to call and give you an excuse to leave." She wanted to be offended, but he was right on every count. "You've been watching me." "I notice things. It's part of my job." "What do you do?" Victor's expression didn't change, but something shuddered in his eyes. "I solve problems." "That's vague." It's accurate. He spun her smoothly, and Lena found herself pressed even closer against him. What do you do, Lena Harper, when you're not kissing strangers at parties you don't want to be at? I'm a student, English literature, and I work at a diner. She wasn't sure why she was telling him this. Maybe because his blunt honesty made her want to be honest in return. Nothing as mysterious as problem solving. Education is important, Victor said, and she detected genuine approval in his tone. Ambition is better. What makes you think I'm ambitious? Because you're still here, dancing with me, even though everything about this situation is telling you to run. His hand tightened on her waist. You're curious, and you're braver than you think. Lena's breath hitched. Or maybe I'm just drunk on cheap champagne. It's not cheap, it's Dom Perignon, probably $200 a bottle. He watched her eyes widen with something like amusement. And you're not drunk. Tipsy, perhaps, but you know exactly what you're doing. Do I? The words came out softer than she'd intended, almost a challenge. Victor leaned down, his breath warm against her ear. You knew kissing me would be different. You felt it the same moment I did. That's why you haven't pulled away, why you're still here letting me hold you like this. You're not afraid of me, Lena. You're afraid of what you're feeling. Her heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could feel it. You're very confident. I'm very right. He pulled back enough to look at her, and the intensity in his eyes made her shiver. I'm going to tell you something now, and you need to listen carefully. Can you do that? Lena nodded, her throat suddenly dry. I'm not a good man, Victor said quietly, his voice pitched for her ears alone. The world I operate in is dangerous, often violent, and always complicated. The people at this party, they're afraid of me, whether they show it or not. They should be. You should be. Are you trying to scare me away? I'm trying to be honest with you. His jaw tightened. Because in about 30 seconds, you're going to have to make a choice. You can thank me for the dance, walk away, and forget this ever happened. Go back to your friend, enjoy the rest of your night, and return to your safe, predictable life. Or, Lena whispered. Or you stay, Victor said, his dark eyes boring into hers. You stay, and everything changes. I'll protect you, provide for you, give you anything you want. But once you step into my world, Lena, there's no going back to invisible. People will know you belong to me. My enemies will see you as leverage. Your quiet life will be over. Lena's mind was reeling. This couldn't be real. Men didn't actually talk like this outside of movies and crime novels. Except Victor Moretti was completely serious, his expression grave and unflinching. What are you? She asked, though part of her already knew. I'm the man who runs this city from the shadows, Victor said simply. I own legitimate businesses, real estate, investments, restaurants, but I also control other things that exist in the gray areas of the law, and sometimes well beyond it. My family has been in this business for 3 generations. You're in the Mafia. That's a simplistic term, but essentially, yes. He didn't flinch from it, didn't try to soften it. I'm telling you this because I don't lie to people under my protection, and because if you stay, you need to understand exactly what you're choosing. Lena should run, should absolutely run. Everything logical and rational in her brain was screaming at her to thank him politely and get as far away from Victor Moretti as humanly possible. But she thought about her small apartment with the leaky faucet she couldn't afford to fix, about the way her boss at the diner grabbed her wrist too tightly when she messed up orders, about the loan statements that arrived every month, the balance never seeming to shrink no matter how many extra shifts she picked up, about the careful, controlled, suffocating safety of a life where nothing ever changed, where she never took risks, where she was always, always afraid. What if I want to stay? She heard herself ask, but not as your possession, not as something you own. Victor's expression shifted. Surprise, maybe, or respect. Explain. You said people would know I belong to you, Lena said, her courage growing with each word. But I don't belong to anyone. I make my own choices. So if I stay, it's as your partner, someone you choose to protect because you want to, not because I'm your property. For a long moment, Victor just looked at her, and Lena wondered if she'd overplayed her hand, if she'd just insulted a dangerous man who could... Then he smiled. A real smile this time, one that transformed his severe features into something almost devastatingly handsome. "You constantly surprise me, Lena Harper," he said, his thumb tracing circles on her lower back. "Most people hear what I just told you, and they either run or they try to use me for money and status. You negotiate. I'm practical. You're extraordinary." He stopped dancing, but didn't release her. "I accept your terms. You'll be under my protection, but you keep your autonomy. Your choices remain your own. I won't own you, Lena, but I will keep you safe." "Why?" The question burst out of her. "You don't even know me. Why would you offer this to a complete stranger?" Victor's expression grew serious again. "Because in my world, Lena, genuine moments are rare. Most people want something from me: money, power, protection, status. But you kissed me on a dare, asked if it was okay first, and then tried to walk away. You're real. That's valuable to someone like me. Perhaps more valuable than you realize." Lena's breath caught. This was insane. Absolutely insane. She'd come to this party expecting nothing more than awkward small talk and mediocre champagne, and now she was standing in the arms of a mob boss who was offering to change her entire life. "I need to think," she started to say, but movement near the entrance caught her attention. 3 men had entered the penthouse, and the crowd's reaction was immediate and visceral. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. People shifted away, creating a clear path through the room. Even the music seemed to quiet. Victor's entire demeanor changed. His body tensed, his hand on her back becoming protective rather than possessive. When he looked toward the newcomers, his expression was cold and dangerous in a way that made Lena's stomach clench. "Who are they?" she whispered. "Trouble," Victor said shortly. He looked down at her and his eyes were hard. "This is your last chance, Lena. Walk away right now and you'll be safe. They won't touch you if you're not with me." But Lena had never been good at doing the smart thing when it mattered. And something about the protective way Victor had moved, positioning himself slightly between her and the approaching men, made her decision crystallize. She tightened her grip on his shoulder. "I'm staying." Victor's eyes flashed with something fierce and approving. "Then stay close to me." The 3 men approached with the swagger of people who were used to getting their way through intimidation. The one in front was older, maybe mid-50s, with graying hair and a cruel mouth. His suit was expensive but flashy. Too many rings on his fingers, too much cologne. "Moretti," he said, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room. "Didn't expect to see you at Marcus's little gathering. Thought you were too busy playing legitimate businessman these days." "Castellano," Victor replied, his tone utterly neutral. "Still compensating for your inadequacies with unnecessary displays?" Lena felt the tension ratchet up immediately. The man, Castellano, smiled, but there was nothing friendly about it. "Careful," Castellano said softly. "You may run the north side, but you're a guest here, same as me. Marcus wouldn't appreciate bloodshed at his party." "Then perhaps you should leave before you tempt me to make an exception." Castellano's gaze finally shifted to Lena, and she resisted the urge to shrink back. His eyes crawled over her in a way that made her skin prickle with revulsion. "Who's this?" he asked. "New toy? She's a bit young for you, isn't she? Though I suppose that's the appeal." Victor moved so fast Lena barely registered it. One moment he was standing beside her, the next he had Castellano by the throat, had lifted him slightly off his feet, his voice dropping to something deadly quiet. "You will apologize to the lady," Victor said, each word precise and controlled. "And then you will leave. If you ever speak to her or about her again, I will personally remove your tongue. Am I understood?" The 2 men with Castellano moved forward, but Victor's free hand disappeared into his jacket, and they froze. Around them, Lena could feel the party guests backing away, giving them space, nobody wanting to be caught in whatever was about to happen. Castellano's face was turning red, but he managed to choke out, "I apologize." Victor held him for another beat, making his point clear, then released him. Castellano stumbled back, rubbing his throat, murder in his eyes. "You just made a serious mistake, Moretti," he rasped. "No," Victor said calmly, straightening his cuffs. "You made the mistake. You disrespected what's mine. There are consequences for that." Lena's heart was hammering so hard she felt dizzy, But she kept her expression neutral, kept her chin up, even as her mind screamed at her that this was real. This was actually happening. She'd just watched Victor Moretti threaten a man's life over an insult to her. Castellano's gaze flickered to her again, and this time there was something calculating in it, something that made ice run down her spine. "She's yours, is she?" he said slowly. "Interesting. I'll be sure to remember that." "You do that," Victor said, his voice still dangerously quiet. "And remember also what happens to people who touch things that belong to me." Castellano smiled, a twisted, bitter expression, and gestured to his men. They left without another word, but Lena could feel the weight of that exit, the promise of future consequences hanging in the air. The moment they were gone, the party tried to resume, conversations picking up again, music returning to normal volume. But everything felt different now. People were watching Victor and Lena with new awareness, new calculation. "I need to make some calls," Victor said, pulling out his phone. He caught the eye of a large man standing near the bar and gestured him over. "This is Marcus. He's going to stay with you while I handle this." "Handle what?" Lena asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. "Castellano just declared war," Victor said matter-of-factly. "By acknowledging you as mine in front of witnesses, I've made you a target. I need to ensure you're protected before he decides to make a move." Lena's stomach dropped. "This is because of me." "This is because of him," Victor corrected firmly. He cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Listen to me. I told you there would be consequences to staying. This is one of them, but I also told you I would keep you safe, and I will. Do you trust me?" It was a ridiculous question. She'd known him for all of 20 minutes, and most of what she knew was that he was dangerous, powerful, and part of a criminal empire. She should absolutely not trust him. "Yes," Lena heard herself say. Victor's expression softened infinitesimally. He leaned down and pressed a kiss to her forehead, surprisingly gentle given everything that had just happened. "Stay with Marcus. Don't leave his sight. I'll be back in 10 minutes. Then he was gone, moving through the crowd with purpose, already talking rapidly into his phone in what sounded like Italian. Lena watched him go, her mind still reeling, and then looked up at Marcus. He was massive, easily 6'5", and built like a linebacker, with kind eyes that seemed at odds with his intimidating size. "Don't worry, Miss Harper," he said, his voice a deep rumble. "Boss's word is law. You're safe." "How did you know my name?" "Boss told me to watch you about 5 minutes ago. Said you were important." Marcus gestured toward a quieter corner of the room. "Come on, let's get you somewhere you can sit down. You look like you could use some water." Lena let him guide her to a plush sofa near the windows, accepted the glass of water he procured from somewhere, and tried to process what had just happened. Monica appeared moments later, eyes wide with shock and excitement. "Oh my God," she hissed, dropping onto the sofa beside Lena. "Oh my God. Do you know who that was? Do you know what just happened?" "I kissed a mob boss and now his rival might try to kill me?" Lena said weakly. "Victor Moretti claimed you in front of everyone." Monica grabbed her arm. "Lena, people are already texting about this. You're going to be all over the society pages tomorrow. Do you understand what this means? That I made a terrible decision? That you just became the most envied woman in New York?" Monica glanced at Marcus, who was standing a respectful distance away but clearly listening. She lowered her voice. "Victor Moretti has never, and I mean never, publicly acknowledged a relationship. He's had women, sure, but never like this. Never protected someone like this. You're basically royalty now." Lena took a long drink of water, trying to calm her racing heart. "I don't want to be royalty. I just wanted to get through college and maybe travel a little and definitely not be involved in mob politics." "Well, too late now," Monica said, though not unkindly. "Lena, what are you going to do?" That was the question, wasn't it? Lena looked around the penthouse, at the people who were still sneaking glances at her, at Marcus standing guard like she was something precious, at the glittering city beyond the windows. She thought about her tiny apartment, her mountain of debt, her careful small life. And then she thought about the way Victor had looked at her like she mattered, like she was worth protecting, like she was extraordinary. "I'm going to see where this goes," she said finally. "I know it's crazy, I know it's dangerous, but Monica, when have I ever done anything remotely spontaneous? When have I ever taken a risk? There's a difference between being spontaneous and getting involved with organized crime, Monica pointed out. I know, but he gave me a choice. He was honest with me about what this would mean. Lena set down her water glass. And maybe I'm tired of being safe all the time. Maybe I want to feel like I matter for once. Monica studied her for a long moment, then sighed. Okay, but if you end up in witness protection, I'm going to say I told you so. Fair enough. Victor returned exactly when he'd said he would, 10 minutes later, with 2 additional men flanking him. He dismissed them with a gesture and came to crouch in front of Lena, taking her hands in his. We need to leave, he said without preamble. I've arranged security for your apartment, and tomorrow we'll move you somewhere more secure. For tonight, you'll stay at my penthouse where I can personally ensure nothing happens to you. Lena's breath caught. Move in with you? We just met. I'm aware, but Castellano knows who you are now, and he's not a patient man. He'll move fast, probably within the next 48 hours, to send a message. I can't protect you properly if you're across the city in an apartment with no security. Victor's grip tightened on her hands. This is non-negotiable, Lena. Your safety comes first. What about my things, my classes, my job? We'll collect your essentials tonight. As for your classes, you can continue them, with security. Your job at the diner is done. You can't just, I can, and I am. His voice was firm but not unkind. You wanted to be my partner, not my possession. I respect that. But partnership means accepting my protection when your life is in danger. Can you do that? Lena looked into his dark eyes and saw genuine concern there beneath the commanding authority. This was his world, and in this world, he knew the dangers better than she did. Okay, she said finally. But we're going to have a long conversation about boundaries tomorrow. Victor's mouth curved into that almost smile again. I wouldn't expect anything less. He stood, helping her to her feet. Come on, let's get you somewhere safe. As they moved toward the exit, Lena caught sight of herself in one of the many mirrors that decorated the penthouse walls. She looked different somehow, still in Monica's borrowed dress, still with her hair falling loose from its updo. But there was something in her eyes that hadn't been there before, something bold and reckless and alive. She'd come to this party invisible, just another broke college student pretending to belong. She was leaving claimed by one of the most dangerous men in New York, with armed guards and a new life waiting for her. It was absolutely insane. But as Victor's hand settled at the small of her back, possessive and protective, Lena realized she didn't regret it. Not the dare, not the kiss, not the choice to stay. For the first time in her careful, controlled life, she was choosing to be bold. Whatever came next, she was ready for it. The elevator ride down from the penthouse was silent, except for the quiet hum of machinery and the presence of 4 armed men surrounding them. Lena kept her hand in Victor's, anchoring herself to something solid as reality began to sink in. Less than an hour ago, her biggest concern had been whether she'd embarrass herself at a party she didn't belong at. Now she was descending 40 stories with a mob boss and his security detail, heading toward a life she couldn't have imagined in her wildest dreams. Victor's thumb traced gentle circles over her knuckles, the gesture at odds with the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes never stopped scanning their surroundings, even in the enclosed space of the elevator. "What are you thinking?" he asked quietly. Lena let out a shaky laugh. "That I should probably call my mother and tell her I won't be home tonight, and that she's definitely going to think I've lost my mind." "Do you live with your mother?" "No, but she calls every night before bed. If I don't answer, she'll panic." Lena pulled out her phone, realized her hands were trembling slightly. "What do I even tell her?" Victor considered this. "Tell her you're staying with a friend. It's not entirely a lie. I'd like to think we're becoming friends, among other things." "Friends," Lena repeated, hyper-aware of the way his hand engulfed hers, the way her body still hummed from that kiss. "Is that what we're calling this?" "What would you call it?" The elevator doors opened before she could answer, revealing an underground parking garage and a sleek black SUV waiting with its engine already running. 2 more men stood by the vehicle, and Lena realized with a start that Victor had orchestrated all of this during those 10 minutes he'd been on the phone. The efficiency of it was both impressive and slightly terrifying. Victor helped her into the back seat, sliding in beside her while two guards took the front and the others dispersed to a second vehicle. As they pulled out into the night, Lena made the call to her mother, keeping her voice steady as she explained she was staying at Monica's place. Yes, she was fine. No, she hadn't been drinking too much. She'd call tomorrow. The small deception sat uncomfortably in her chest, but what was the alternative? Hi, Mom. I kissed a stranger at a party and now I'm under mob protection because a rival crime family might try to kill me? You're a good daughter, Victor observed when she hung up. Checking in even when you're 23 and independent. My mom raised me alone after my dad left when I was 10. We take care of each other. Lena tucked her phone away. What about your family? Do they know you're bringing home a random woman you met at a party? Something dark flickered across Victor's face. My father is dead. My mother lives in Italy, and we speak rarely. As for the rest of the family, they know better than to question my decisions. The way he said it made it clear the subject was closed, at least for now. Lena looked out the window as the city streaked past, neon lights and late-night crowds blurring into abstract patterns. She should be terrified. She should be demanding they take her home, should be running as far and fast as possible from this beautiful, dangerous man and his violent world. Instead, she asked, "What happens now?" "Now we secure you," Victor said. "We'll stop at your apartment briefly, 10 minutes maximum, to collect essentials. My men are already there clearing the building and checking for threats. Then we go to my place, you get some sleep, and tomorrow we make a plan." "A plan for what?" "For keeping you alive while we deal with Castellano." His jaw tightened. "He disrespected you publicly. He made you a target. That requires a response." "What kind of response?" Lena wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. Victor turned to look at her fully, his dark eyes serious. "The kind that makes it clear what happens when someone threatens what's mine. But that's my concern, not yours. Your job is to stay safe and let me handle the rest." "I'm not good at letting other people handle things for me," Lena admitted. "I've been taking care of myself for a long time." "I know. I can see it in the way you carry yourself, the way you negotiated terms when most people would have just accepted or run." His hand found hers again. "But this is different, Lena. This world has rules you don't know yet, dangers you can't see coming. You need to trust me on this." The SUV pulled up in front of her apartment building, a modest 5-story walk-up in a neighborhood that was safe enough but far from glamorous. Lena felt a sudden wave of self-consciousness as Victor's guards piled out, their expensive suits and obvious weapons drawing stares from the few people still on the street. "Third floor," she said. "Apartment 3C." 2 guards entered the building first, and Victor kept her close as they followed. Her neighbor, Mrs. Chen, peeked out from behind her door, eyes widening at the sight of Lena with 4 large men in suits. Lena gave her what she hoped was a reassuring wave and made a mental note to explain this somehow tomorrow. Her apartment looked even smaller than usual, with Victor and his guards filling the space. She saw him take in the details, the second-hand furniture, the textbooks stacked on every available surface, the leak-stained ceiling she'd been meaning to report to the landlord for months. His expression didn't change, but she felt the assessment happening nonetheless. 10 minutes, he reminded her gently. Essentials only. We'll arrange for the rest to be moved later if needed. Lena grabbed her duffel bag from the closet and started throwing things in with shaking hands. Clothes, toiletries, her laptop, the medications from her bathroom cabinet. She was reaching for her favorite coffee mug, chipped but precious because her mother had given it to her, when Victor appeared in the bedroom doorway. "We need to talk about something," he said, his voice serious enough that Lena's stomach clenched. "That sounds ominous." He moved into the small room, and suddenly the space felt even more cramped. "I meant what I said about you keeping your autonomy. But there are going to be rules, Lena, non-negotiable ones. I need you to understand that." Lena set down the mug and turned to face him fully. "What kind of rules?" "You don't go anywhere without security, not to class, not to the store, nowhere. You check in with me or Marcus twice a day minimum. If you sense anything off, anything at all, you call immediately." His dark eyes bored into hers. "And if I tell you to do something in a moment of danger, you do it. No questions, no hesitation. Your safety depends on you trusting my judgment in those situations." That's a lot of control for someone who said I wasn't his possession, Lena pointed out, though her voice was measured rather than accusatory. It's the minimum necessary to keep you breathing, Victor said bluntly. Castellano is vindictive and he's smart. He won't come at you directly. He'll wait for a moment when you seem vulnerable, when you let your guard down. These rules aren't about controlling you. They're about making sure he doesn't get that moment. Lena studied his face, the grim set of his mouth, the tension in his shoulders. You're really worried about this. I've seen what he does to people who get in his way. I've cleaned up the aftermath. Something haunted flickered in Victor's eyes. I won't let that happen to you. I can't. The intensity in his voice made her chest tighten. Okay, she said softly. I'll follow the rules. I'll trust you on this. Some of the tension left Victor's frame. He reached out and cupped her face, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. Thank you. But, Lena added, when this is over, when the threat from Castellano is handled, we renegotiate. Deal? His mouth quirked. Deal. A knock on the door interrupted them. Boss, we need to move. Unmarked car circling the block. Victor's entire demeanor shifted instantly. All business. Get her bag. We're leaving now. Everything happened in a blur. One of the guards grabbed her half-packed duffel, while another hustled Lena toward the door. Victor kept himself between her and the windows, one hand on her back, guiding her quickly but carefully down the stairs. They emerged from the building to find both SUVs running, doors open, engines ready. In, Victor ordered, practically lifting Lena into the back seat. He slid in beside her as the door slammed shut and the vehicle lurched into motion. Lena's heart was hammering. Was that them? Was that Castellano's people? Maybe. Maybe just coincidence, but I don't take chances with your life. Victor pulled out his phone, firing off rapid instructions in Italian to someone on the other end. When he hung up, his expression was grim. We're taking an alternate route to my place. More time, but safer. The next 20 minutes were tense and silent, except for the occasional murmured communication between the guards. Lena watched the city pass by, trying to calm her racing pulse, trying to process that people might actually be trying to hurt her. This morning she'd been worried about her English Lit midterm. Now she was fleeing potential assassins. Hey, Victor said quietly, drawing her attention back to him. Look at me. Lena met his dark eyes. You're safe, he said firmly. He said, as long as you're with me, you're safe. I need you to believe that. I'm trying, she admitted. This is just a lot to take in. I know, and I'm sorry you got pulled into this because of me. His hand found hers again, that now familiar anchor. But I meant what I said earlier. You're extraordinary, Lena. Worth protecting, worth the trouble this is going to cause. What kind of trouble? Victor's smile was humorless. The kind where I have to remind the other families why crossing me is a bad idea. The kind that might escalate into a full-scale war if Castellano is stupid enough to push it. But that's for me to worry about. The SUV finally pulled into an underground garage, this one far more secure than her apartment building. There were cameras everywhere, armed guards at multiple checkpoints, reinforced gates that required keycard access. Victor's penthouse, it seemed, was a fortress. The elevator required both a key and a fingerprint scan. As it rose smoothly upward, Lena asked, how many floors? I own the top 3. Living quarters on the highest floor, offices and security on the one below, guest suites and staff areas on the 3rd. You own 3 floors of a Manhattan high-rise. Lena shook her head. Of course you do. The elevator opened directly into Victor's penthouse, and Lena had to suppress a gasp. If the party venue had been impressive, this was something else entirely. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the glittering city, the space decorated in sleek modern lines with touches of warmth, dark leather, rich wood tones, expensive art on the walls. It was sophisticated and masculine and clearly designed for someone who valued both aesthetics and function. Your room is this way, Victor said, guiding her down a hallway. He opened a door to reveal a bedroom that was bigger than her entire apartment. King-size bed with luxurious linens, an ensuite bathroom visible through another doorway, a sitting area with plush chairs, and a view that must have cost a fortune all on its own. This is where I'm staying? Lena asked weakly. Unless you'd prefer my room, Victor said, and there was a hint of heat in his voice that made her stomach flip. But I thought you might want your own space, at least for tonight. Lena's face burned. This is good. This is perfect. Victor set her duffel bag on the bed. Bathroom has everything you might need, but if you want something specific, there's a phone on the nightstand. Dial 0 and someone will get it for you. Kitchen is fully stocked if you're hungry, and my room is at the end of the hall if you need anything. Where will you be? Making calls, arranging things. His expression was grim. This situation with Castellano needs to be handled quickly, before he gets any ideas about acting on his threat. Lena caught his hand before he could leave. Victor, be honest with me. How much danger am I actually in? He looked at her for a long moment, seeming to weigh his words carefully. Enough that I'm not taking any chances. Castellano is ambitious, and he's been looking for an excuse to test my strength for months. You gave him that excuse, through no fault of your own. He'll want to prove he can strike at me through you. So this is about you, not me. In his mind, yes, you're a symbol of my vulnerability, proof that I care about something beyond business and power. Victor's jaw tightened. But you're not a symbol to me, Lena. You're a real person who deserves to be safe. And I will make sure of it, whatever it takes. The conviction in his voice made something warm unfurl in Lena's chest. She found herself stepping closer, drawn to him in a way that defied all logic and self-preservation. You barely know me. Why do you care so much? Because in 23 years of living in this world, surrounded by people who want something from me, you're the first person who kissed me just because you wanted to. Not for money or status or protection, just because. His hand came up to cup her face. That kind of genuine feeling is rare, Lena. I'm not letting it go without a fight. Before she could think better of it, Lena rose on her toes and kissed him. It was softer than their first kiss, less desperate, but somehow more meaningful. Victor's arms came around her, pulling her close, and for a moment the danger and the strangeness of the situation fell away. There was just the warmth of his body against hers, the way he kissed her like she was precious, the feeling of rightness that settled in her bones. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Victor rested his forehead against hers. You should get some sleep, he murmured. It's been a long night. Will you sleep? Eventually. I have things to handle first. Lena wanted to protest, wanted to make him stay, but she could see the weight of responsibility in his eyes. This was his world, and right now he needed to secure it, to secure her place in it. Be careful, she said instead. Victor's smile was genuine this time. Always am. Lock the door after me, and don't open it for anyone but me or Marcus. Understood? Understood. He kissed her once more, quick and possessive, then left. Lena locked the door as instructed and leaned against it, trying to catch her breath. Her reflection in the mirror across the room showed a woman who looked shell-shocked and thrilled in equal measure, still wearing a borrowed dress, lips kiss-swollen, eyes bright with adrenaline and possibility. She should shower, should try to sleep, should probably have a small breakdown about the absolute insanity of the last few hours. Instead, she walked to the windows and looked out at the city spread below like a constellation of lights. Somewhere out there, Castellano was planning his next move. Somewhere out there, Victor was marshaling his forces, preparing to protect her at any cost. And Lena Harper, who had spent 23 years being careful and safe and invisible, was at the center of it all. Her phone buzzed with a text from Monica. OMG, are you okay? People are talking. Call me when you can. Lena typed back, I'm fine, safe. We'll explain tomorrow. Thank you for tonight. It changed everything. She meant it. That dare, that $50 kiss, had altered the trajectory of her entire life. Tomorrow she'd probably panic about it. Tomorrow she'd probably question every decision that had led her to this moment. But tonight, standing in a penthouse with a view that cost more than she'd earn in 10 years, protected by a dangerous man who looked at her like she was worth starting a war over, Lena felt more alive than she ever had. Her mother had always told her to be careful, to think things through, to never take unnecessary risks. But maybe some risks were necessary. Maybe some chances were worth taking, even if they terrified you. Especially if they terrified you. Lena finally made herself move away from the windows. She showered in the enormous bathroom, using expensive products that smelled like sandalwood and bergamot, and changed into the oversized t-shirt she'd grabbed from her apartment. When she emerged, she found a tray on the sitting room table that definitely hadn't been there before. Fresh fruit, cheese, crackers, a bottle of water, and a note in bold handwriting. In case you're hungry, sleep well. V. The thoughtfulness of it made her throat tight. She picked at the food, her stomach finally settling enough to recognize hunger, and eventually climbed into the massive bed. The sheets were the softest thing she'd ever felt, probably Egyptian cotton with some ridiculous thread count, and the mattress was perfect, firm but yielding. She should sleep. Her body was exhausted, running on adrenaline fumes, but her mind wouldn't settle, kept replaying the night's events. The kiss, the confrontation with Castellano, Victor's fierce protection, the promise of danger hanging over everything like a storm cloud. Lena must have dozed off eventually because she woke to the sound of voices in the hallway, male voices speaking in low, urgent tones. She checked her phone. 3 in the morning. She'd been asleep for maybe 2 hours. The voices continued, too muffled to make out words, but carrying an undercurrent of tension that made her nerves prickle. Lena slipped out of bed and crept to the door, pressing her ear against it. Can't be serious about this. That was a voice she didn't recognize, older, with a thick accent. For a girl you just met? Victor? This is madness. My decisions aren't up for debate, Antonio. Victor's voice was cold, authoritative. She's under my protection now. That's final. Castellano will see this as weakness. He'll push harder. Let him push. He'll find out what happens when he tests me. And if he goes after her anyway? If he decides she's too tempting a target? Then I'll make an example of him that the families will remember for the next 50 years. The absolute certainty in Victor's voice sent chills down Lena's spine. No one touches what's mine, Antonio. No one. Make sure the message is clear. There was a long pause, then, as you wish, boss. I'll spread the word. Footsteps retreated, and Lena quickly moved away from the door, diving back into bed. She was still feigning sleep when she heard her door open quietly, felt Victor's presence in the room. He stood there for a moment. She could sense him watching her. Then the door closed again, the lock clicking softly. Lena's eyes opened in the darkness. She stared at the ceiling, her heart racing. Victor was willing to start a war over her, actually willing to put his empire at risk to keep her safe. It should terrify her. Maybe it did terrify her just a little. But it also made her feel something she'd never felt before. Valued. Protected. Chosen. She thought about the conversation she'd overheard, about the certainty in Victor's voice when he'd claimed her as his, about the way he'd looked at her tonight, like she was something precious and rare. This wasn't just about attraction or even about keeping her safe. There was something deeper happening here, something that had sparked to life with that first kiss and was growing into something neither of them had expected. Lena pulled the covers up to her chin, breathing in the faint scent of Victor's cologne that seemed to permeate the entire penthouse. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new fears, new adjustments to a life she could never have imagined. She'd have to figure out how to balance her independence with the security Victor was providing. She'd have to learn the rules of this new world she'd stepped into. She'd have to decide what she wanted from whatever was growing between them. But for now, in the quiet hours before dawn, wrapped in luxury and safety, and the knowledge that someone was willing to go to war for her, Lena let herself feel something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Morning light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, pulling Lena from restless dreams filled with dark eyes and darker promises. For a disoriented moment, she didn't recognize the room. Too spacious, too luxurious, the sheets too soft against her skin. Then memory crashed back in waves. The party, the kiss, Victor Moretti, the threat hanging over her head like a blade. She reached for her phone on the nightstand. 8:30. A dozen missed texts from Monica, 3 from her mother asking about her day, and 1 from an unknown number that made her pulse jump. Good morning, breakfast is ready when you are. Take your time. V. Lena sat up, running her hands through her tangled hair. This was real. This was actually her life now. She was living in a penthouse owned by a mob boss who'd claimed her as his in front of witnesses, who'd threatened war over an insult to her honor, who kissed her like she was oxygen and he was drowning. The shower helped clear her head, though she couldn't help but notice that the bathroom was stocked with women's toiletries, expensive brands, unopened, clearly purchased just for her. Someone had thought of everything, right down to a hairdryer and a selection of hair products. When she emerged, she found her duffel bag had been unpacked while she slept, her meager belongings looking lost in the enormous walk-in closet. She dressed in jeans and a simple sweater, the most normal outfit she could manage, and steeled herself to face whatever came next. The penthouse was quiet as she made her way down the hallway, following the scent of coffee and something sweet. She found Victor in the kitchen, and the sight of him stopped her in her tracks. He'd shed the suit jacket and tie, rolled up the sleeves of his white dress shirt to reveal forearms corded with muscle. He was plating what looked like French toast, moving with the easy confidence of someone comfortable in the domestic space. It was such a normal scene, so at odds with everything she knew about him, that Lena had to suppress a slightly hysterical laugh. Victor looked up and smiled, a real smile that transformed his severe features. "You're awake. Good. I wasn't sure if you'd sleep in after last night." "Hard to sleep when your life has been completely upended," Lena said, moving into the kitchen. The space was all gleaming marble and professional-grade appliances, the kind of kitchen she'd seen in magazines but never thought she'd actually stand in. "Fair point." Victor poured coffee into a mug, her chipped mug from the apartment, she realized with a start. "How do you take it?" "Cream, no sugar." She watched him doctor the coffee exactly right, sliding it across the counter to her. "You cook?" "My mother insisted all her children know how to take care of themselves. Said we shouldn't rely on others for basic survival skills." He gestured to the breakfast spread. French toast, fresh fruit, crispy bacon. "Sit. Eat. We have a lot to discuss." Lena settled onto one of the bar stools, accepting the plate he handed her. The French toast was perfect, crispy on the outside and custardy in the middle, dusted with powdered sugar and served with real maple syrup. She took a bite and couldn't suppress a small sound of pleasure. "Good?" Victor asked, amusement in his voice. "Better than good. Where did you learn to cook like this?" "Years of practice and a mother who didn't accept mediocrity." He leaned against the counter across from her, coffee mug in hand, and Lena was struck again by how surreal this was. A domestic breakfast with a man who'd threatened someone's life over her just hours ago. "You said we needed to discuss things," she prompted. Victor's expression grew serious. "Several things. First, your safety. I've assigned a permanent security detail to you. Marcus will be your primary guard, with 2 others rotating shifts. They'll accompany you anywhere you need to go." "Even to class?" "Especially to class. Castellano knows you're a student, which means he knows your general schedule and location. Universities are difficult to secure. Too many entry points, too many people." Victor set down his mug. "I've also enrolled you at a private security training course. 3 times a week, you'll learn basic self-defense, situational awareness, how to handle a weapon if necessary." Lena's fork clattered against her plate. "A weapon? Victor, I can't." "You can, and you will." His voice was firm, but not unkind. "I don't expect you to ever need it. But I won't have you defenseless if something goes wrong. Knowledge is protection, Lena. The more you know, the safer you are." She wanted to argue, but the logic was sound, and the set of his jaw told her this wasn't negotiable. "What else?" "Your mother. You need to tell her something closer to the truth. Not everything," he added quickly, seeing her alarm, "but enough that she doesn't worry or inadvertently put herself at risk by coming to your old apartment looking for you." Lena's stomach clenched. She hadn't thought about that. "What do I say? Hi, Mom, I'm dating a mob boss and people might try to kill me?" Tell her you've met someone, that it's serious, and that you've moved in with him for safety reasons. Tell her you're being cautious because your boyfriend has enemies in business. Victor's dark eyes met hers steadily. "It's not a lie, just an incomplete truth. She'll want to meet you. Then she'll meet me." He said it simply, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I have no problem meeting your mother, Lena. I'm not hiding you or what you mean to me." "What you mean to me?" The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Lena took a sip of coffee to cover her sudden nervousness. "What about my job? You said I couldn't work at the diner anymore." "You can't. It's too exposed, too vulnerable. But if you need to work, I can arrange something in one of my legitimate businesses. Or," he added carefully, "you could focus on your studies. I'll cover your tuition, your expenses, Whatever you need. Pride flared hot in Lena's chest. I don't need you to pay my way. I've been taking care of myself just fine. I know you have, but there's a difference between charity and partnership. Victor moved around the counter, standing close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. You're in danger because of me. The least I can do is make sure you're not struggling financially while dealing with that danger. It's not about what you need, Lena. It's about what I want to give you. Why? The question burst out of her, raw and honest. Why are you doing all this? We barely know each other, Victor. Last night it was incredible and terrifying and completely insane. But it was just one night. How can you be so sure about this? About me? Victor cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing across her cheekbones with surprising gentleness. Do you know what my life has been for the past 10 years, since I took over my father's empire? It's been meetings and negotiations and violence. It's been threats and power plays and always being on guard. I haven't let anyone close because closeness is vulnerability, and vulnerability gets you killed in my world. His forehead touched hers, and Lena's breath caught at the intimacy of the gesture. Then you walked across that party and asked permission to kiss me. You negotiated for your autonomy when most people would have just taken what I offered. You stayed even after I told you the truth about who I am. His voice dropped lower, rough with emotion. You're real, Lena. You're genuine. And I haven't had anything genuine in so long I'd almost forgotten what it felt like. So yes, it's been one night. But it's been the most honest night of my life in a decade. That's worth protecting. You're worth protecting. Lena's eyes stung with unexpected tears. She'd spent so long being invisible, being overlooked, being just another struggling student in a city full of them. And now this powerful, dangerous man was looking at her like she hung the moon. I'm scared, she admitted quietly. Not of you, but of all of this. Of what it means, what could happen. Good. Fear keeps you alert. Victor pressed a kiss to her forehead. But don't let it paralyze you. We'll handle this together, every step of the way. The sound of footsteps in the hallway made them both turn. Marcus appeared, looking apologetic for the interruption. Boss, Antonio's here. Says it's urgent. Victor's expression hardened instantly. All business. Give me 5 minutes. He looked back at Lena. Finish your breakfast. I need to handle something, but I won't be long. Is it about Castellano? Probably. He squeezed her hand. Stay in the penthouse. Don't answer the door for anyone but Marcus. Understood? I'm not a child, Victor. You don't have to give me orders. His mouth quirked. Force of habit. Please stay in the penthouse where I know you're safe. Better? Marginally. But she smiled despite herself. Go. Handle your business. I'll be here. Victor kissed her, quick and possessive, then left with Marcus. Lena heard their voices fade toward what she assumed were the offices on the floor below, and suddenly the penthouse felt enormous and empty. She finished her breakfast mechanically, her mind spinning with everything Victor had said, everything he wanted to give her, everything that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Her phone rang. Her mother. Lena took a deep breath and answered. Sweetheart, I was starting to worry. You didn't call last night. I'm sorry, Mom. Things got a little crazy. Lena moved to the windows, looking out at the city below. Actually, I need to tell you something. She kept it simple, following Victor's script. She'd met someone. It was serious. She was moving in with him. Yes, it was fast, but sometimes you just knew. No, he wasn't dangerous. Well, he was in business and had some rivals, so they were being cautious. But he was treating her well. What's his name? Her mother asked, and Lena could hear the worry beneath the curiosity. Victor Moretti. There was a long pause. Moretti, her mother repeated. Italian? His family is, yes. Mom, he's good to me. He's protective and respectful, and he makes me feel safe. Safe from what, Lena? You said he has business rivals. What kind of business? Lena closed her eyes. Her mother wasn't stupid, and the Moretti name carried weight even if you weren't part of the criminal underworld. Real estate, investments, restaurants. But yes, there are some complications. That's why I moved in with him. Better security. Oh, honey. Her mother's voice went soft with concern. Are you sure about this? You can always come home if you need to. I'm sure. I know it sounds crazy, Mom, but I've never been more certain of anything. And as she said it, Lena realized it was true. Despite the fear, despite the danger, she wanted this, wanted him, wanted the feeling of being valued and protected and chosen. They talked for a few more minutes, her mother extracting a promise that Lena would bring Victor to visit soon, that she'd call every day, that she'd be careful. When Lena finally hung up, she felt lighter somehow. One difficult conversation down. She spent the next hour exploring the penthouse more thoroughly. Victor's home office was impressive but clearly well used, papers stacked neatly on the desk, multiple monitors dark and waiting. His bedroom was at the end of the hall. She peeked in despite herself, taking in the massive bed, the minimalist decor, the faint scent of his cologne lingering in the air. It was intimate, seeing this private space, and she backed out quickly before she could second-guess her curiosity. The library made her stop and stare. An entire room lined floor to ceiling with books, a comfortable reading chair by the window, a ladder on rails to reach the higher shelves. She ran her fingers over the spines. Classic literature, contemporary fiction, history, philosophy, even poetry. Not what she would have expected from a mob boss, but then Victor kept surprising her. She was examining a first edition Hemingway when Victor's voice came from the doorway. "Find something interesting?" Lena jumped, nearly dropping the book. "You have an incredible collection. My one indulgence that doesn't involve business or control." He moved into the room, and she noticed the tension in his shoulders, the tightness around his mouth. Antonio had news. Castellano made a move. Her stomach dropped. What kind of move? He approached 3 of my business partners, offering them better terms if they switched their loyalty. It's a test, seeing who's willing to side with him over me. Victor's jaw clenched. 2 refused immediately. The 3rd is considering it. What happens to the one who's considering it? I make it clear that betrayal has consequences. He said it matter-of-factly, and Lena was reminded forcibly that this man lived in a world where violence was currency and loyalty was everything. Will you hurt him? I'll ruin him financially. His business will collapse within a week, and everyone will know why. That's usually more effective than physical violence. It serves as a warning to others. Victor crossed to her, pulling her close. This is what my world looks like, Lena. Business conducted through threats and power plays. If it's too much, it's not, she interrupted. She placed her hands on his chest, feeling his heart beat steady and strong beneath her palms. I'm not naive, Victor. I know what you are, what you do. I'm choosing you anyway, but I need you to be honest with me, always. Don't hide the ugliness thinking it'll protect me. Something fierce and approving flashed in his eyes. You continue to surprise me. Good. Keep you on your toes. She managed a smile, though her heart was racing. What else did Antonio say? Castellano's being quiet, which worries me more than if he was making noise. Quiet means he's planning something specific. Victor's hand came up to cup her face. I've tripled security around you. Marcus and his team are the best, but I'm not taking chances. When do I start the self-defense training you mentioned? Tomorrow, if you're willing. The instructor is a former Special Forces operative who's worked with my people before. She's tough, but effective. She? Victor's mouth quirked. I thought you'd be more comfortable with a woman instructor for the physical training. Was I wrong? Lena felt a rush of warmth at his consideration. No, you were right. Thank you for thinking of that. I think of everything when it comes to you. He kissed her softly, and Lena leaned into him, finding comfort in the solid strength of his body against hers. When they broke apart, Victor said, I need to go to one of my restaurants tonight. Check on something. I'd like you to come with me. Is that safe? I wouldn't suggest it if it wasn't. It's neutral territory, and I'll have a full security team. But I want you to start seeing my world, understanding how it works. If we're doing this, building something real, you need to know all of it. Lena considered this. Going out felt risky, but staying locked in the penthouse felt like hiding. And Victor was right. If she was going to be part of his life, she needed to understand it. Okay, but I don't have anything to wear to a fancy restaurant. There's a boutique downstairs. I'll have them send up selections. At her look, he added, the building has several retail spaces. One of the perks of ownership. Of course it does, Lena muttered, but she was smiling. The afternoon passed in a strange blur of normalcy and surrealism. A woman from the boutique arrived with racks of dresses, and Lena tried on outfit after outfit while Victor worked in his office, emerging periodically to give opinions with surprising fashion sense. They settled on a deep emerald dress that hugged her curves without being too revealing, elegant but not ostentatious. Marcus arrived to brief them on the evening's security arrangements, his presence reassuring and professional. 2 cars, 4 guards minimum, routes planned with multiple contingencies. Lena listened to it all with growing awareness of just how much effort went into keeping Victor safe, and now her, by extension. "Are you always this careful?" she asked Victor after Marcus left. "Always. Complacency kills in my line of work." He was adjusting his cufflinks, preparing for the evening, and Lena watched the economical movements, the way he carried himself with absolute confidence. The moment you assume you're safe is the moment someone takes advantage. That sounds exhausting. It's necessary. He turned to her, taking in the emerald dress, and his eyes heated. "You look beautiful." Lena felt her face warm. "Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself." He was in a different suit tonight, charcoal gray with subtle pinstripes, his shirt a crisp white that made his olive complexion glow. He looked dangerous and sophisticated and entirely too attractive for her peace of mind. The drive to the restaurant was tense despite Marcus's reassuring presence in the front seat. Lena watched the city pass by, hyper-aware of the second SUV following them, of the way Marcus's hand never strayed far from his weapon. This was her life now, armed escorts and constant vigilance and the knowledge that danger could strike at any moment. The restaurant was in Little Italy, an upscale establishment with dark wood and soft lighting. They entered through a private entrance, Victor's hand at the small of her back, and Lena immediately felt the shift in atmosphere. People recognized him. Staff straightened, conversations quieted, eyes tracked their movement through the space. "Mr. Moretti," the maitre d' greeted them with a bow that was just shy of obsequious. "Your table is ready." They were led to a private room in the back, secluded but with a clear view of the main dining area through one-way glass. Marcus took up position outside the door, while 2 other guards blended into the restaurant's general crowd. Victor held Lena's chair, a gesture of old-fashioned courtesy that made her heart flutter despite the circumstances. "This is one of my first legitimate businesses," Victor explained once they were settled. "I bought it 15 years ago when the previous owner couldn't pay his debts. Now it's one of the most successful restaurants in the neighborhood." "Do all your business dealings start with someone owing you money?" "Most of them." He poured wine, something red and undoubtedly expensive. "In my world, debt is leverage. Leverage is power. It's how things work." A waiter appeared with appetizers Lena didn't remember ordering, and she realized Victor must have prearranged the menu. The food was exquisite. Handmade pasta, fresh seafood, sauces that tasted like they'd been perfected over generations. She tried to enjoy it, but her nerves made everything taste like ash. "Talk to me," Victor said quietly. "What are you thinking?" Lena set down her fork. "I'm thinking that everyone here is afraid of you. I'm thinking that this is just a restaurant to me, but to you it's probably part of some larger strategy or power structure I don't understand. I'm thinking that I'm completely out of my depth." "You are," Victor agreed, and she appreciated the honesty. "But you're learning. That's what matters." He reached across the table, taking her hand. "Ask me anything. I told you I'd be honest." "How did you become this?" The question had been burning in her since the night before. "You said your father ran the empire before you. Did you choose this life, or did it choose you?" Victor's expression grew distant. "Both. I was raised knowing what my father did, understanding that one day I'd take over. But there was a moment when I could have walked away. I was 18, had been accepted to Columbia, could have built a different life. Then my father was killed in a hit orchestrated by a rival family." Lena's breath caught. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. He wasn't a good man and we weren't close. But his death left a power vacuum, and if I didn't step up, everything he'd built would have been carved up by vultures." Victor's jaw tightened. "So I chose this. I took over, consolidated power, eliminated threats. I've spent the last decade building something stronger, more stable, more legitimate than what my father had." "Is that what you want? To go legitimate?" Eventually. My children won't grow up in this world if I can help it. He said it with such certainty that Lena's heart skipped. Children, future. He was thinking long term about them, about this thing between them that had started with a dare and a kiss. Before she could respond, the door to their private room opened and a woman entered. She was striking, tall, dark-haired, dressed in designer clothes that screamed wealth and status. And the way she looked at Victor, with familiarity and something like possessiveness, made Lena's stomach clench. "Victor, darling," the woman purred, completely ignoring Lena. "I heard you were here. It's been too long." Victor's expression went cold. "Isabella, this is a private dinner." "Since when do you need privacy?" Isabella finally deigned to glance at Lena, her eyes dismissive. "Oh, is this the girl everyone's talking about? The one from the party?" "This is Lena Harper," Victor said, his voice carrying a warning edge. "My partner." "And you're interrupting." "Partner." Isabella laughed, the sound sharp and unpleasant. "How sweet. Victor, can I speak with you privately for a moment? It's about the Castellano situation." Lena felt Victor's hand tighten on hers, saw the muscle jump in his jaw. "Anything you need to say can be said in front of Lena." "Are you sure about that?" Isabella's smile was predatory. "Because what I have to say involves business you've kept very private, family business." The emphasis on family was clear. Lena met Victor's eyes and saw the conflict there, the desire to protect her from his world's ugliness, warring with his promise to be honest, to include her. She made the decision for him. "It's fine," Lena said quietly, pulling her hand from his. "I'll wait outside with Marcus." "Lena, it's okay, Victor. Really." She stood, smoothing down her dress. "Take your meeting. I'll be right outside." She left before he could argue, before she could see the look on Isabella's face, before the jealousy churning in her gut could make her say something she'd regret. Marcus straightened when she emerged. "Everything all right, Miss Harper?" "Fine. Just giving them some privacy for business talk." Lena leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. "Can I ask you something, Marcus?" "Of course." "How long have you worked for Victor?" 8 years. "And in that time, have there been others? Women he's been serious about?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, and Lena could see him weighing loyalty against honesty. Finally he said, "There have been women. But no, Miss Harper, never serious, never like this." "How do you know?" "Because in 8 years I've never seen him threaten war over someone. I've never seen him bring someone to his home, share his space, his life." Marcus met her eyes steadily. "And I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." The words settled something anxious in Lena's chest. She managed a smile. "Thank you for telling me that. It's the truth. Whatever the boss feels for you, it's real, and that means the rest of us will protect you with our lives, because you matter to him." Before Lena could respond, raised voices filtered through the door, Victor's, cold and cutting, and Isabella's, high with frustration. Lena couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear enough. An argument. About her, probably, or about the risk she represented. The door flew open and Isabella stormed out, her face flushed with anger. She shot Lena a look of pure venom as she passed, and Lena straightened her spine, refusing to be cowed. Victor appeared in the doorway, and his expression was thunderous. "Lena, come back inside." She followed him into the private room, watching as he poured himself a fresh glass of wine and drained half of it in one swallow. The tension radiating from him was palpable. "I'm sorry about that," he said finally. "Isabella has boundary issues." "Who is she?" "My father's goddaughter. Her family and mine have business ties going back 50 years. Victor's jaw clenched. "She seems to think that gives her certain rights, certain claims on my time and attention." "And does it?" "No." He turned to face her fully. Whatever she implied, whatever she tried to insinuate, no. There was never anything serious between us, and there never will be. She's ambitious, and she sees me as a stepping stone to more power. That's all it's ever been. Lena searched his face, looking for deception, and finding only frustrated honesty. What did she want to discuss? Castellano. She's suggesting we form an alliance with her family to counter his moves. Victor's expression was grim. She also suggested I reconsider my attachment to you, since it's making me vulnerable. Maybe she's right, Lena said quietly. Maybe I am making you vulnerable. You are, Victor agreed, and the honesty of it stole her breath. But vulnerability isn't always weakness, Lena. Sometimes it's what makes us human, what makes us worth protecting. He crossed to her, pulling her into his arms. I've spent 10 years being invulnerable, untouchable, alone. I don't want to be that person anymore. Not if it means losing this, losing you. Lena pressed her face against his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady and strong beneath her cheek. I don't want to be the reason you get hurt, or worse. You won't be. I'm too stubborn and too careful to let that happen. He tilted her face up, forcing her to meet his dark, intense eyes. But I need you to trust me, Lena. Trust that I know how to handle my world, my enemies, my life. Can you do that? She thought about the past 24 hours, about how drastically her life had changed, about the fear and the thrill and the absolute certainty that being with Victor felt right, despite all the logical reasons it shouldn't. Yes, she whispered. I trust you. Victor kissed her then, deep and claiming, and Lena kissed him back with everything in her. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. Let's go home, he murmured. I've had enough of the outside world tonight. I want you to myself for a while. Home. The word settled into Lena's chest with surprising warmth. His penthouse was becoming home. A strange, luxurious, heavily guarded home, but home nonetheless. The drive back was quiet. Lena tucked against Victor's side in the back seat while Marcus drove and the second SUV followed at a discreet distance. She felt drained, emotionally wrung out from the evening's intensity. Victor seemed to sense it, his arm around her shoulders protective and comforting without demanding anything in return. Back at the penthouse, Lana kicked off her heels with a sigh of relief and moved to the windows, looking out at the glittering city. Victor came up behind her, his hands settling on her waist. Thank you for handling Isabella with grace, he said quietly. A lot of people in your position would have made a scene. I figured a scene was the last thing you needed. Lena leaned back against him. Besides, I was more interested in what you'd say than what she'd say. And what did I say? That I'm your partner. That what we have is real. She turned in his arms to face him. Was that true? Or were you just establishing dominance in front of her? Victor's smile was slow and genuine. It was true. You are my partner, Lena, in every way that matters. And what we have, he cupped her face in his hands. What we have is the most real thing in my life right now. I meant every word. Lena rose on her toes and kissed him, pouring everything she couldn't say into the gesture, gratitude and fear, and the terrifying, exhilarating feeling growing in her chest that might be the beginning of something much deeper than attraction. Victor responded in kind, his arms tightening around her, his mouth moving over hers with a hunger that made her knees weak. When they finally broke apart, both flushed and breathing hard, Victor said roughly, "You should get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day with your first training session. Will you stay with me?" The words came out before Lena could second-guess them. Just to sleep. I don't want to be alone tonight. Something soft and warm flickered in Victor's dark eyes. I'll stay. They changed in comfortable silence, Lena in her oversized t-shirt, Victor in sleep pants that hung low on his hips in a way that made her mouth go dry. The bed was enormous, but they gravitated to the center anyway, Victor pulling her against his chest, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. Lena, he murmured into the darkness. No matter what happens with Castellano, with my world, with any of this, you're safe with me. Always. I need you to believe that. I do, she whispered, and meant it. Against all logic, against every self-preservation instinct she had, she believed him, trusted him, wanted this dangerous, impossible thing they were building together. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new fears, new adjustments. But tonight, wrapped in Victor's arms, feeling protected and valued and chosen, Lena let herself hope that maybe, just maybe, they could make this work. That maybe taking the dare, kissing the stranger, choosing the dangerous path, maybe it was the best decision she'd ever made. Lena woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the warm weight of Victor's arm across her waist. For a moment she lay still, listening to his steady breathing, feeling the solid presence of him behind her. It was intimate in a way that had nothing to do with sex, this quiet morning peace, the trust implicit in sleeping beside someone, the vulnerability of unconsciousness shared. Victor stirred, his arm tightening around her. "You're awake," he murmured, his voice rough with sleep. "So are you. Hard to sleep when I'm holding something this precious." He pressed a kiss to her shoulder, and Lena felt heat bloom through her chest. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in months, actually." She turned in his arms to face him, taking in his sleep-mussed hair, the softness in his eyes that she suspected few people ever saw. "No nightmares about crime bosses or rival families trying to kill me." "Good. That's my job, to worry about those things, so you don't have to." Victor traced a finger along her jawline. "Your first training session is at 10. Are you ready?" "As ready as I'll ever be to learn how to fight off potential assassins." Lena tried for levity, but Victor's expression grew serious. "I need you to take this seriously, Lena. The instructor I've hired, her name is Rachel Chen. She's one of the best in the business. Former CIA, expert in Krav Maga, and tactical awareness. She doesn't coddle her students." "I'll take it seriously," Lena promised. "I want to be able to protect myself. I don't want to be a liability." "You're not a liability. You're—" Victor paused, seeming to search for the right words. "You're the reason I'm remembering why any of this matters. Why I built this empire. Why I fought so hard to consolidate power and go legitimate. It was supposed to be about building something better, something worth passing on. But somewhere along the way, it just became about control and survival." "You're reminding me there's more to it than that." The raw honesty in his voice made Lena's throat tight. She cupped his face in her hands, studying the severe lines softened by morning light, the vulnerability he was showing her. "You're a good man, Victor Moretti. Whatever else you are, whatever you've had to do, at your core, you're good." "I'm not sure that's true," he said quietly, "but I want to be, for you. That has to count for something." They lay there for a few more minutes, wrapped in each other in the quiet morning, before reality intruded in the form of Victor's phone buzzing insistently on the nightstand. He grabbed it with a muttered curse, his expression darkening as he read whatever message had come through. "What is it?" Lena asked, already knowing from his reaction that it was bad news. "Castellano made another move. One of my shipping containers was seized by customs. Drugs planted inside. Anonymous tip called in." Victor was already out of bed, pulling on clothes with sharp, angry movements. "It's a setup, obviously, but it's going to tie up resources and attention while I deal with the legal fallout." "He's trying to distract you." "He's succeeding." Victor's jaw clenched. "I need to meet with my lawyers, handle this before it becomes a bigger problem. Marcus will take you to your training session and stay with you. Don't go anywhere without him, understood?" "Victor, I'm not a child. I know you're not." He crossed to her, pulling her up and into his arms. "But Castellano is escalating, which means he's getting ready to make his real move. This legal trouble is a smokescreen. While I'm busy putting out fires, he'll strike at what he knows will hurt me most. You. Please, Lena, just do as I ask, for my peace of mind." The desperation in his voice, quickly masked but unmistakable, made Lena nod. "Okay, I promise. Marcus doesn't leave my side." Victor kissed her, hard and possessive and tinged with something like fear, then left, already on his phone barking orders in rapid-fire Italian. Lena stood in the middle of the bedroom, feeling the sudden absence of his presence like a physical ache, and tried to push down the anxiety churning in her gut. An hour later, she was in the back of the SUV with Marcus driving, heading to a private gym in a nondescript building in Chelsea. The other two guards followed in the second vehicle, and Lena watched the city pass by with new awareness of every car, every pedestrian, every potential threat. "Has Victor always been this protective?" she asked Marcus. "The boss has always been careful about security, but this level of concern?" Marcus met her eyes in the rearview mirror. "This is new. You matter to him, Miss Harper. More than anything has mattered in a long time." The gym was in a basement space, windowless and utilitarian, with mats covering most of the floor and equipment lining the walls. A woman was waiting for them, Asian, maybe 40, with a wiry build that radiated controlled power. She assessed Lena with dark, shrewd eyes. You must be Lena. I'm Rachel Chen. Her handshake was firm, her voice crisp with authority. Victor told me you have no combat training whatsoever. Is that accurate? I took a self-defense seminar in college once. That's about it. Then we have a lot of work to do. Rachel gestured to the mats. First rule, forget everything you think you know about fighting. Movies and TV make it look graceful and choreographed. Real violence is ugly, fast, and brutal. My job is to teach you how to survive it. For the next 2 hours, Rachel put Lena through her paces. She learned how to break grips, where to strike for maximum damage, how to use an attacker's momentum against them. Rachel was relentless but patient, correcting Lena's form, making her repeat movements until muscle memory began to form. You're stronger than you look, Rachel observed during a water break, and you don't hesitate once you commit. That's good. Hesitation gets you killed. Lena wiped sweat from her face, her muscles already aching. How did you end up working for Victor? He saved my life once, about 5 years ago. I was doing private security for a diplomat. Situation went sideways. Victor's people extracted us when things got hot. I owed him a debt, and when he asked me to train someone important to him, I agreed. Rachel's expression was unreadable. He cares about you. I can tell by how specific his instructions were. Not just teaching you to fight, but teaching you to survive, to escape, to stay alive no matter what. Does that happen often? People trying to kill the women in his life? There haven't been women in his life. Not real ones. Rachel held Lena's gaze. You're an anomaly, which makes you a target, but it also makes you dangerous to his enemies, because a man protecting something he loves is more unpredictable than one who's only protecting himself. The word love hung in the air between them, and Lena's breath caught. It was too soon for that, surely. They'd known each other barely 2 days, but the intensity of what she felt, the way Victor looked at her, the protectiveness and possession and fierce claiming, maybe it wasn't love yet, but it was heading that direction at terrifying speed. They resumed training, and Rachel introduced Lena to weapons, how to handle a gun safely, how to use everyday objects as defensive tools. Lena's hands shook the first time she held the pistol, the weight of it foreign and frightening. Don't think of it as a weapon, Rachel instructed. Think of it as a tool for survival. If someone's trying to hurt you, you use whatever you have to stop them. No hesitation, no mercy, no second guessing. You survive first, feel guilty later. By the time the session ended, Lena was exhausted, bruised, and oddly exhilarated. She'd pushed her body in ways she never had before, discovered a core of strength she hadn't known existed. Rachel walked her out to where Marcus was waiting. You did well today, Rachel said, and coming from her it felt like high praise. Same time Thursday. We'll work on situational awareness and escape tactics. The drive back to the penthouse was quiet, Lena's muscles protesting every bump in the road. Her phone buzzed with a text from Victor. How was training? Are you all right? She typed back. Sore but good. Rachel's intense. How's the legal situation? Complicated. Won't be home until late. Marcus will stay with you. Be safe. The formality of his text worried her. Victor not being able to let his guard down, even in a message, meant things were worse than he'd let on. Lena stared at her phone, wanting to call him, wanting to hear his voice, but knowing he was probably in the middle of crisis management and wouldn't appreciate the distraction. Back at the penthouse, she showered away the sweat and ache, changed into comfortable clothes, and tried to settle into some semblance of normalcy. She had reading to catch up on for her literature class, papers to write, a life that existed beyond this strange new reality. But focusing was impossible when every news alert, every unfamiliar sound sent her nerves jangling. Marcus had positioned himself in the living room, laptop open but clearly monitoring the security feeds. Lena brought him coffee and sat across from him, needing the company even if conversation was sparse. Can I ask you something? She said after a while. Of course, Miss Harper. What's Victor like when he's not being the boss? When it's just him, no performance, no control? She twisted her hands together. I feel like I'm seeing glimpses of that person, but I don't know if it's real or if it's just what he thinks I want to see. Marcus considered this carefully. The boss is complicated. He's had to be hard to survive, to command respect in a world that doesn't give second chances. But the man beneath that, the one who reads poetry at night, who cooks because it centers him, who still calls his mother every Sunday even though she left years ago. That's real too. He doesn't show that side to many people. The fact that he's showing it to you means something. He calls his mother every Sunday, never misses. Even when she doesn't answer, he calls. Leaves messages about his life, about the business, the legitimate parts anyway. About wanting her to be proud of him. Marcus's expression was somber. His father was brutal, Miss Harper, cruel in ways that left scars you can't see. Victor spent his whole life trying to be different, to build something better. But he's afraid he's too much like the old man, that the violence is in his blood and he can't escape it. Lena's heart clenched. She thought about the gentle way Victor touched her, the honesty in his eyes, the vulnerability he'd shown. He's nothing like that. I can tell. You're good for him. You make him want to be better, gentler. We've all noticed the change. Marcus smiled slightly. The men respect him, but now they're starting to like him too. That's because of you. Before Lena could respond, Marcus's phone buzzed. He answered it, his expression immediately shifting to alert concern. Understood. We're secure here. No, she hasn't left the building. I'll inform her. He hung up and looked at Lena with an expression that made her stomach drop. That was the boss. There's been an incident at one of his restaurants, the one we went to last night. Someone planted a bomb. It didn't detonate, but it was meant to send a message. Lena's blood ran cold. Castellano? Has to be. It's too brazen to be anyone else. Marcus moved to the windows, checking the street below with professional paranoia. The boss wants you to know he's fine. He's handling it, and under no circumstances are you to leave this building. Security's been doubled outside. This is escalating fast. It is. Castellano's making his play. Marcus turned back to her. But you need to understand something, Miss Harper. In this world, there are rules, lines you don't cross. Bombing a restaurant, risking civilian casualties, that crosses lines. Castellano just declared open war, and the other families won't stand for it. He's overplayed his hand. What does that mean for Victor? It means he has justification now to respond with force. The other families will back him, or at least stay neutral. Castellano's isolated himself. Marcus's expression was grim. This ends soon, one way or another. Lena spent the rest of the afternoon in a state of anxious limbo, trying to focus on schoolwork, but constantly checking her phone for updates from Victor. When he finally walked through the door at 9 that evening, she flew to him, throwing her arms around him and burying her face in his chest. I'm fine, he murmured, holding her tight. I'm fine, Lena. I wasn't anywhere near the restaurant when the bomb was found. Marcus told me, but I was so scared. Her voice broke, and she hated how weak it sounded, how dependent she'd become on this man in such a short time. Victor pulled back to look at her, his hands framing her face. I know. I'm sorry you had to worry. But this is good news, actually. Castellano went too far, violated the unwritten rules. The commission is meeting tomorrow to discuss sanctions against him. He'll be censured, possibly cut off from family alliances. He's made himself vulnerable. So this could be over soon? It could be. But something in his voice made her wary. There's one problem. A cornered animal is the most dangerous kind. Castellano knows he's losing support, which means he'll make a desperate play before the commission can act against him. Something big. Something that forces everyone to choose sides. Lena's stomach clenched. And you think he'll come after me? I think it's a strong possibility. You're my most obvious vulnerability. Victor's jaw tightened, which is why I've made arrangements. Tomorrow, you're going somewhere safe. Somewhere Castellano can't reach you. What? No, Victor, I'm not running away. You're not running. You're being strategic. His voice was firm, brooking no argument. I have a property upstate, heavily secured, off the grid. You'll go there with Marcus and a full security team. Stay for a few days while I handle Castellano. Once he's neutralized, you come home. And what if neutralizing him means you get hurt? What if something happens to you while I'm hiding in the woods somewhere? Lena pulled away from him, anger and fear warring in her chest. I won't do it, Victor. I won't leave you to face this alone. You won't be leaving me alone. I'll have my entire organization backing me. What I won't have is the distraction of worrying about you every second. Victor caught her hands, holding them firmly. Please, Lena. I can't fight effectively if I'm terrified for your safety. Let me send you somewhere secure, just for a few days. What about my classes? My training with Rachel? Rachel will come with you. You can continue training there. As for classes, you'll miss a few days. We'll work it out. His dark eyes were pleading now, a rare show of vulnerability. I need to know you're safe. I can't function otherwise. Please. Lena wanted to argue, wanted to dig in her heels and refuse, but she saw the desperation in his eyes, the genuine fear beneath his controlled exterior. And she realized that this wasn't about him controlling her, it was about him being able to focus on surviving what was coming. Okay, she said finally. I'll go. But you have to promise me something. Anything. You come back to me. Whatever it takes, however this ends, you survive it and you come back. Her voice broke on the last word and she gripped his hands tighter. I can't lose you, Victor. I know it's too soon to feel this way. I know we barely know each other, but I can't lose you. Victor pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. You won't. I promise you, Lena. I've survived this long by being careful and ruthless when necessary. I'm not going to fall now, not when I finally have something worth living for beyond power and revenge. They stood there in the entrance hall, wrapped around each other, and Lena felt the shift between them, something deeper settling into place, something that went beyond attraction or protection or the adrenaline of danger. This was real. Whatever this was, it mattered in ways that terrified and exhilarated her. When do I leave? She asked against his chest. Tomorrow morning, early. We'll have tonight. Victor pulled back to look at her. I want to spend tonight with you, Lena. Not thinking about Castellano or danger or what comes next. Just us. He ordered dinner from the restaurant, the one that hadn't been bombed, he clarified with dark humor, and they ate on the balcony overlooking the city. The food was delicious, but Lena barely tasted it, too focused on memorizing the lines of Victor's face, the way candlelight softened his harsh features, the rare smile that transformed him into someone younger, less burdened. Tell me something about yourself I don't know, Victor said over wine. Something normal, mundane, something that has nothing to do with any of this. Lena thought about it. I wanted to be a veterinarian when I was little. I was obsessed with animals, used to rescue strays and try to nurse them back to health in our garage. My mother finally had to put her foot down when I brought home a raccoon with rabies. Victor's laugh was surprised and genuine. A raccoon? That's ambitious. I was 8 and fearless, or stupid, probably stupid. She smiled at the memory. What about you? What did you want to be before you knew you'd take over the family business? His expression grew distant. An architect. I loved the idea of building things, creating structures that would last. I used to sketch buildings in my notebooks during school, drive my teachers crazy because I was always designing instead of paying attention to math. Do you still sketch? Sometimes. Late at night, when I can't sleep, I have notebooks full of buildings that will never exist. He said it matter-of-factly, but Lena heard the wistfulness beneath the words. Show me, she said impulsively. Victor hesitated, then stood and held out his hand. She took it, letting him lead her to his office. He pulled out a drawer and extracted a leather-bound notebook, opening it to reveal page after page of detailed architectural sketches. Buildings that were modern and elegant, incorporating natural elements, designed with both beauty and function in mind. Victor, these are incredible, Lena breathed, tracing a finger over a particularly stunning design for what looked like a museum. You're really talented. It's just a hobby. It's more than that. This is a part of you, the part that wants to create instead of destroy, the part that sees beauty and possibility. She looked up at him. You should do something with these. Actually build something you've designed. Maybe someday, when things are different, when I've gone fully legitimate. Victor closed the notebook, but there was something in his eyes that looked like hope. When I have a reason to build something meant to last. The way he looked at her when he said it made Lena's breath catch. He was talking about the future, about them, about a life beyond the violence and danger of his current world. It should have been too soon for that kind of thinking, but instead it felt inevitable, like they'd been heading toward this from the moment their lips first met. They made love that night with desperate intensity, clinging to each other like they could somehow ward off tomorrow by staying wrapped together in the dark. Victor was tender and demanding by turns, whispering things in Italian that Lena didn't understand but felt in her bones. When they finally lay spent and tangled in the sheets, she pressed her face against his neck and breathed him in, trying to memorize everything about this moment. "I'm scared," she admitted into the darkness. "So am I." Victor's arms tightened around her. "But fear means we have something to lose. For the first time in 10 years, I'm afraid, because I have you to lose. That means I'll fight harder, be smarter, do whatever it takes to end this and come back to you. Promise me again." "I promise, Lena. I promise I'll come back." She wanted to believe him. She did believe him. But as she drifted off to sleep in his arms, Lena couldn't shake the feeling that tomorrow was going to change everything, that the relative safety of the last few days was about to shatter, and that the real test of what they had was just beginning. Morning came too soon, gray light filtering through the windows to reveal the harsh reality of what they were facing. Victor was already awake, watching her with an intensity that made her chest ache. "It's time," he said softly. Lena nodded, not trusting her voice. She dressed quickly in the clothes that had been laid out, practical jeans, a warm sweater, sturdy boots. Her bag was already packed, she realized. Victor must have done it while she slept, ensuring she had everything she needed. Marcus was waiting in the living room with Rachel Chen and 2 other guards Lena recognized from previous security details. They were all armed, all wearing expressions of grim determination. "The route's been planned," Marcus said to Victor. "Multiple vehicles, decoy cars, changing paths. We'll have her secure by noon." "Good." Victor turned to Rachel. "You don't let her out of your sight, not for a second." "Understood, boss." Lena felt like she was moving through a dream as Victor walked her to the private elevator, his hand never leaving the small of her back. In the garage, an armored SUV waited, engine running, surrounded by additional security. "This is goodbye for now," Victor said, pulling her into his arms one last time. "Just for a few days. Then I'm coming to get you myself, and we're going to have the boring, normal life you deserve." "I don't want normal anymore," Lena said fiercely. "I just want you. Safe. Alive, that's all I need." He kissed her then, hard and claiming and tinged with desperation. When he pulled back, his eyes were blazing with emotion he didn't bother to hide. "I love you, Lena Harper. I know it's insane, I know it's too fast, but I need you to know it. I love you." The words hit her like a physical blow, stealing her breath, making her eyes sting with sudden tears. "I love you too," she whispered. "Come back to me, Victor Moretti. Don't you dare make me regret saying that." "Never." One more kiss, quick and fierce. Then he was stepping back, nodding to Marcus. "Get her out of here, keep her safe." Lena let Marcus guide her into the SUV, her eyes locked on Victor until the doors closed and the vehicle started moving. She twisted in her seat, watching through the tinted windows as Victor stood in the garage, hands in his pockets, watching her leave with an expression that looked like it was killing him. Then they turned a corner and he was gone. And Lena was speeding away from the city, from danger, from the man she'd somehow fallen in love with in less than a week. She pressed her hand against the window, watching Manhattan's skyline recede in the distance, and tried to believe that this wasn't the last time she'd see any of it. Tried to believe that Victor's promise would hold, that he'd come back to her, that the dangerous world he lived in wouldn't take him away before they'd had a chance to build something real. But as the city disappeared behind them and they headed toward unknown safety, Lena couldn't shake the cold certainty settling in her bones that the worst was yet to come, and that loving Victor Moretti might end up being the bravest and most foolish thing she'd ever done. The safe house was nothing like Lena had expected. Instead of some remote cabin in the woods, it was a sprawling estate tucked into the Catskills, surrounded by acres of private land and protected by state-of-the-art security that would have made a military installation jealous. The main house was beautiful in an understated way, stone and timber, large windows overlooking mountains, warm and inviting despite the armed guards patrolling the perimeter. "The boss doesn't do anything halfway," Marcus said as they pulled up the long driveway. "This place has been in his family for 3 generations. His mother used to bring him here as a kid, before everything went to hell." Lena could picture it, a younger Victor running through these woods, unburdened by the weight of an empire, still innocent enough to believe in safety and happiness. The image made her chest ache with longing for a version of him she'd never meet, a life he'd never had the chance to live. Rachel Chen was already establishing protocols by the time they entered the house, her tactical mind assessing entry points and sightlines with professional efficiency. "You'll stay in the master suite on the second floor," she told Lena. "Reinforced windows, secondary exit route through the bathroom if needed. I'll be in the adjoining room. Marcus will take the room across the hall. The other guards will rotate shifts outside." "This feels like overkill," Lena said, though she knew it wasn't. Not with Castellano escalating, not with Victor's life on the line back in the city. "Overkill keeps you breathing," Rachel said bluntly. "Now come on, we're not wasting time. Training continues here, maybe more intensely since we have privacy and space." The next 2 days passed in a blur of physical exhaustion and mental anguish. Rachel pushed Lena harder than she had at the gym, teaching her not just to fight but to think tactically, to assess threats, to make split-second decisions that could mean the difference between life and death. They ran drills in the woods, practiced weapon handling in the basement range, worked on hand-to-hand combat until Lena's entire body was one massive bruise. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the emotional torture of being cut off from Victor. She called him twice a day on a secure line, their conversations brief and carefully edited since they both knew others were listening. He told her he was fine, that things were progressing, that the commission meeting had gone in his favor. She told him she was safe, that she missed him, that she was counting the hours until she could come home. What they didn't say, what hung heavy in the silence between words, was the fear. The knowledge that Castellano was still out there, still dangerous, still capable of doing terrible damage before he was stopped. On the third morning, Lena woke to find Marcus standing in her doorway, his expression grim in a way that made her blood run cold. "What happened?" she demanded, throwing off the covers. "Is Victor hurt?" "The boss is fine, but Castellano made his move last night." Marcus's jaw clenched. He hit 3 of Victor's businesses simultaneously: a restaurant, a nightclub, and a shipping warehouse. No bombs this time. Gunfire. 5 people dead, including 2 civilians who were just in the wrong place. Lena felt the room tilt. Oh God. It gets worse. Castellano's claiming Victor started it, that he was defending himself against aggression. He's trying to force the commission to choose sides, to make this a full-scale war between families. Marcus moved into the room, his voice urgent. "The boss is calling for a sit-down tonight. Neutral ground, all the family heads present. He's going to end this, one way or another." "I need to go back," Lena said immediately. "If there's going to be some kind of confrontation, absolutely not." The boss was very clear. "You stay here, stay safe, stay out of it." Marcus held up a hand before she could argue. "This is his world, Miss Harper. He knows how to handle it. What he can't handle is worrying about you while he's trying to survive a room full of criminals who'd love to see him weakened." Lena wanted to scream, to throw things, to do anything but sit in this beautiful prison while Victor walked into danger. But she forced herself to breathe, to think rationally. Marcus was right. Her presence would be a distraction, a vulnerability. The best thing she could do for Victor right now was exactly what he'd asked. Stay safe and let him handle his world. "Fine," she said, hating how helpless she felt. "But I want updates. Every hour. I need to know he's okay. I'll make sure of it." The day crawled by with agonizing slowness. Lena tried to focus on training with Rachel, but her mind was in the city, imagining every terrible scenario. A sit-down between crime families could go wrong in 1,000 ways. Castellano was desperate, which made him unpredictable. Even with the commission's support, Victor was walking into a room where one wrong word, one perceived slight, could end in bloodshed. At 6 that evening, Marcus's phone rang. He answered, listened, and his expression shifted to something Lena couldn't read. When he hung up, he looked at her with an intensity that made her pulse jump. "The sit-down is in 2 hours. The boss wanted you to know he's thinking about you, that he's going to end this tonight." Marcus paused. "He also wanted me to tell you that whatever happens, the arrangements are made. Your safety, your future. It's all secured. You'll be taken care of." "Why does that sound like a goodbye?" Lena's voice shook. "It's not. It's just the boss being careful, making sure all contingencies are covered." But Marcus wouldn't meet her eyes, and Lena knew he was lying, or at least not telling her the whole truth. She spent the next 2 hours pacing her room like a caged animal, her phone clutched in her hand, waiting for updates that didn't come. Rachel tried to distract her with tactical exercises, but Lena couldn't focus, couldn't think about anything except Victor walking into that meeting, putting himself at risk, possibly sacrificing himself to end the threat to her. At 8:30, her phone rang. Unknown number. Lena answered with shaking hands. "Lena Harper?" A woman's voice, cold and professional. "Yes. Who is this?" "My name is Elena Castellano. I believe you know my brother Anthony." Lena's blood turned to ice. "How did you get this number?" "That's not important. What's important is that I'm calling to make you an offer, a way to end this conflict without more bloodshed." Elena's voice was smooth, persuasive. "My brother made mistakes. He let emotion override judgment, but the situation can still be salvaged if you're willing to help." "I'm not helping you do anything," Lena said flatly. "Not even to save Victor Moretti's life?" Elena let that hang in the air. "The sit down tonight, it's a trap, Lena. My brother has men positioned around the building, ready to eliminate Victor the moment he leaves. The commission won't protect him once he's outside neutral ground. He'll be gunned down in the street like a dog." Lena's heart stopped. "You're lying." "Am I?" "Ask yourself why the meeting was scheduled for neutral ground in the first place, why my brother agreed so readily to attend. He's planning to use the commission's rules against Victor, honor the sit-down, then kill him the moment it's over. It's brilliant, really. He gets what he wants, and the other families can't retaliate because technically he followed protocol." "But why are you telling me this?" Lena demanded, her mind racing. "Because I'm tired of war, tired of violence. My brother is going to get himself killed along with a lot of other people before this is over." Elena's voice softened. "But if you were to leave Victor, publicly and permanently, my brother would have no reason to continue. The insult that started this would be erased. Everyone could walk away. You want me to abandon him? I want you to save him, and yourself. Do you really think you can survive in his world, Lena? You're a college student, not a mobster's wife. This life will destroy you eventually, if Castellano doesn't do it first." Elena paused. "I'm offering you an out. Take it. Disappear. Victor lives, you live, everyone moves on." Lena's hand tightened on the phone. "And if I refuse?" "Then Victor dies tonight, and you'll spend the rest of your life knowing you could have saved him." Lena's voice turned sharp. "Don't be stupid, girl. Love isn't worth dying for." The line went dead. Lena stood frozen, her mind reeling. It could be a trick, a manipulation designed to get her to do something stupid. But what if it wasn't? What if Castellano really was planning to ambush Victor after the meeting? She burst out of her room, nearly colliding with Marcus in the hallway. "I just got a call from Elena Castellano. She says tonight's meeting is a trap, that they're planning to kill Victor when he leaves." Marcus's expression went hard. "When did this call come in?" "Just now. She said there are gunmen positioned around the building, that they'll strike the moment Victor's outside the commission's protection." Lena grabbed his arm. "Marcus, what if she's telling the truth? Then it's information the boss needs to have." Marcus was already pulling out his phone, dialing rapidly. "But it could also be psychological warfare, designed to make us panic and do something reckless." He got voicemail and cursed. The meeting started. He's got his phone off. Marcus tried another number, then another, his frustration mounting. "No one's answering. They're all in the sit-down." "Then we have to go there," Lena said. "We have to warn him before the meeting ends." "Absolutely not. I'm not taking you into a potential war zone." "Marcus, if you don't take me, I'll find a way to go myself. I'll steal a car. I'll call a taxi. I'll run all the way to the city if I have to." Lena's voice was fierce, desperate. "I'm not sitting here while Victor walks into an ambush. I won't. So you can either take me and keep me safe, or I go alone. Your choice." Marcus stared at her for a long moment, and she saw the conflict in his eyes. Duty to Victor's orders warring with the knowledge that she was right, that the warning could save lives. Finally, he cursed again and grabbed his keys. "Rachel, you're with us. Stevens, Martinez, you stay here and secure the location." Marcus was all business now, moving with military precision. "We take the armored SUV, full tactical gear. If this goes wrong, if we walk into gunfire, you do exactly what I say. Understood? Understood, Lena said, already running for the stairs. The drive back to the city was the longest 2 hours of Lena's life. Marcus pushed the SUV to its limits, weaving through traffic while making call after call trying to reach someone, anyone, who could warn Victor. But the sit-down had clearly established a communication blackout. No one was answering. No one was available. "Where's the meeting?" Lena asked as they crossed into Manhattan. "Old warehouse in Red Hook, neutral ground technically owned by the commission." Marcus's hands were tight on the wheel. If Castellano really has gunmen positioned, they'll be in the surrounding buildings, probably rooftop positions for clear lines of fire. Rachel was in the back seat, assembling something that looked terrifyingly like a sniper rifle. "If we get there before the meeting ends, I can do a sweep, take out any threats I identify, but we're running out of time." They hit traffic in Brooklyn, and Lena wanted to scream with frustration as the minutes ticked by. It was past 10 now, well over an hour since the meeting had started. How long did these sit-downs typically last? When would Victor emerge unknowing into Castellano's trap? Marcus's phone finally rang, and he answered on speaker. "Antonio, thank God. Where's the boss?" "Still in the meeting. It's going well. Castellano's been censured, his support's crumbling, should be wrapping up in the next 15 minutes. Antonio's voice was pleased, satisfied. "Why? What's wrong?" "We have intelligence suggesting an ambush when the meeting ends, shooters positioned around the building." There was a beat of silence, then Antonio cursed viciously. "You're sure?" "Sure enough that we're hauling ass to Red Hook right now. You need to keep that meeting going, stall them, buy us time to sweep the area." "I'll do what I can, but Marcus, if there are shooters out there..." "We'll handle it. Just keep the boss inside until you hear from me." They screeched into Red Hook with 5 minutes to spare. The warehouse was exactly as Marcus had described. Industrial, isolated, surrounded by older buildings that provided perfect vantage points for snipers. Rachel was out of the SUV before it fully stopped, her rifle assembled and her tactical gear making her look like something out of a military operation. "There," she said, pointing to a building 300 yards away. "Rooftop southeast corner. I've got movement." "How many?" Marcus demanded. "At least 3 positions I can confirm. Probably more I can't see from this angle." Rachel's voice was calm, professional. "I can take out 2, maybe 3 if I'm fast. But if there are more, then we even the odds." Marcus was pulling weapons from a concealed compartment in the SUV. He handed Lena a pistol, and her hand shook as she took it. "You remember what Rachel taught you? Safety off, sight picture, squeeze, don't pull." Lena's voice was steadier than she felt. "Good. Stay behind me. Stay low. And if shooting starts, you find cover and you stay there. You do not play hero. Understood?" Before Lena could answer, the warehouse door opened and men began emerging. She recognized some of them from the party. Older men in expensive suits, the kind of people who wielded power through money and fear. They dispersed to various vehicles, some with obvious security, others apparently comfortable enough to walk alone. Then Victor appeared, and Lena's heart lurched. He was flanked by 2 guards, moving with that confident stride she'd come to recognize, completely unaware of the danger waiting for him. She saw the moment he reached for his phone, probably turning it back on, probably about to see the dozen missed calls. "Rachel, do you have a shot?" Marcus asked urgently. "On one of them, yes. But the moment I fire, the others will know we're here." "Then make it count!" Everything happened at once. Rachel's rifle cracked, and somewhere on a distant rooftop, a man fell. But her shot had given away their position, and suddenly the night erupted with gunfire. Lena heard the distinctive crack of sniper rounds hitting pavement, saw Victor and his guards dive for cover behind a parked car, saw chaos explode as the various crime families' security teams returned fire at targets they couldn't clearly see. Marcus grabbed Lena and hauled her behind the SUV as bullets sparked off metal and shattered glass. Rachel was firing with methodical precision, taking out shooters with the cold efficiency of a professional soldier. But there were too many of them, too many positions, and the street had become a war zone. "We need to get to the boss," Marcus shouted over the gunfire. "He's pinned down, can't move without being exposed." "I'll provide cover," Rachel said, already repositioning. "Go now, while they're focused on me." Marcus didn't hesitate. He pulled Lena with him, using vehicles for cover as they zigzagged toward where Victor was trapped. Lena's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst, adrenaline making everything sharp and surreal. She'd trained for this, practiced for this, but the reality of actual bullets whizzing past her head was nothing like the controlled environment of the gym. They made it to Victor's position, and Lena saw his expression shift from tactical focus to absolute fury when he saw her. "What the hell are you doing here?" he demanded, even as he pulled her down beside him. "Marcus, I told you to keep her at the safe house." She got intel about the ambush. "If we hadn't come, you'd have walked right into it." Marcus fired twice at a muzzle flash in a window. "We need to move, boss. This position's too exposed." "The SUV's armored," Victor said, his tactical mind already working. "If we can get to it—" 30 yards of open ground, Marcus interrupted. "They'll cut us down before we make it halfway." Victor's jaw clenched as he assessed the situation, his mind clearly racing through options. Then his expression hardened with decision. "I'm going to draw their fire. When they focus on me, you get Lena to the SUV. Don't stop. Don't look back. Just run." "No," Lena said immediately. "Absolutely not. You're not sacrificing yourself. I'm not sacrificing anything. I'm creating a diversion." Victor cupped her face in his hands, his eyes blazing with intensity. "I told you I'd come back to you. Trust me, I'm coming back." Before she could argue, he was moving, breaking cover and firing as he ran toward a different vehicle, his guards following and laying down covering fire. The shooter's attention shifted immediately, tracking Victor, and Lena felt Marcus grab her arm. "Now, move!" They ran. Lena's legs pumped, her lungs burned, bullets kicked up asphalt around them, but Marcus was right. The shooters were focused on Victor, seeing him as the primary target. They made it to the SUV and Marcus shoved her inside, already turning back to provide covering fire for Victor. But something was wrong. One of Victor's guards was down, and Victor had taken cover behind a car that was taking sustained fire, the windows exploding in showers of safety glass. He was trapped, and the shooters had him pinned. Lena saw it before Marcus did, a man emerging from a side alley moving toward Victor's position with clear intent. Castellano. It had to be. He was going to finish this himself. Was going to kill Victor while his attention was focused elsewhere. She didn't think, didn't hesitate. The pistol was in her hand and she was out of the SUV before Marcus could stop her, before rationality could override instinct. Rachel's training kicked in. Sight picture, controlled breathing, squeeze, don't pull. She fired 3 times and Castellano went down hard, clutching his shoulder and screaming. The gunfire stopped. Just stopped, as if someone had thrown a switch. In the sudden silence, Lena stood in the middle of the street with a smoking gun in her hand, staring at the man she'd just shot, and felt everything catch up to her at once. Her hands started shaking so badly she nearly dropped the weapon. Victor was there in seconds, pulling her against him, his hands running over her, frantically checking for injuries. "Are you hit? Lena, are you hit?" "I'm fine," she managed, though her voice sounded strange to her own ears. "I shot him. I shot Castellano." "You saved my life." Victor's voice was rough with emotion. He looked at Castellano, still alive but clearly in pain, then back at Lena. "You incredible, terrifying, amazing woman. You saved my life." Police sirens were approaching in the distance, and the various family members were disappearing into the night with practiced efficiency. Antonio appeared, taking in the scene with sharp eyes. "We need to leave. Now, before NYPD gets here." He looked at Castellano. "What do you want me to do with him, boss?" Victor's expression was ice cold as he looked at the man who'd threatened Lena, who'd killed innocent people, who'd tried to destroy everything Victor had built. "Take him to the warehouse. He and I are going to have a conversation about consequences." Lena knew she should be horrified by the implication, by the violence promised in Victor's voice. But all she felt was fierce satisfaction that the man who'd terrorized them was finally going to face justice. Victor's kind of justice. They made it back to the penthouse as dawn was breaking over the city, all of them exhausted and running on adrenaline fumes. Rachel and Marcus peeled off to their own quarters, while Victor led Lena to his bedroom, his hand never leaving hers. "Let me see you," he said, once the door was closed behind them. "Let me make sure you're really okay." He examined her carefully, checking for injuries she didn't have, and Lena let him, understanding he needed this, needed the physical confirmation that she was whole and safe. When he was finally satisfied, he pulled her into his arms and just held her, his face buried in her hair. "You terrified me tonight," he said quietly. "When I saw you in the middle of that firefight, I've never been so scared in my life. I had to warn you. Elena Castellano called. She told me about the ambush. I couldn't just sit there knowing you were walking into a trap. So you drove into a war zone instead." Victor pulled back to look at her, and his expression was torn between admiration and exasperation. "You brilliant, reckless, impossible woman. You could have been killed." "So could you. That's why I came." Lena cupped his face in her hands. "I love you, Victor. I'm not going to apologize for trying to save you. I love you too, which is why the thought of losing you makes me want to lock you in a tower somewhere and never let you leave." His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. "But that's not who you are. You're brave and strong, and you make your own choices, even when those choices give me heart attacks." "What happens now?" Lena asked. "With Castellano?" Victor's expression hardened. "He'll face the commission. What he did tonight, the ambush, the civilian casualties, the violation of sacred ground, it's unforgivable. The other families will demand retribution. His empire will be dismantled, his assets seized, his power destroyed. And him personally? That depends on how cooperative he is." Victor's voice was cold. "If he's smart, he'll accept exile, disappear, and never come back. If he's not smart, if he tries to fight or retaliate—" He didn't finish the sentence, but the implication was clear. "It's really over then," Lena said, feeling the weight of the past week finally lifting. "We're safe. We're safe." Victor kissed her softly. "And now we can start figuring out what normal looks like, whatever that means for us." Over the next few weeks, Lena watched Victor systematically dismantle Castellano's organization with the efficiency of a surgeon removing a tumor. The commission backed his every move, and the other families fell in line, understanding that Castellano had crossed too many lines and needed to be made an example of. In the end, Anthony Castellano chose exile over execution, fleeing to Argentina with his sister and what little money Victor allowed him to keep. He was alive, but powerless. And the message was clear. Victor Moretti was not to be crossed. But more importantly, Lena watched Victor begin the slow process of transforming himself and his empire. He started divesting from the criminal enterprises, investing heavily in legitimate businesses, using his power and resources to build something legal and sustainable. It wouldn't happen overnight. Decades of criminal infrastructure couldn't be dismantled in a month. But the direction was clear. Lena returned to her classes with Marcus as a constant shadow, though now the other students seemed to give her a wide berth, aware somehow of who she was connected to. She didn't mind. Her priorities had shifted. Education still mattered, but it was no longer the center of her universe. Victor was her center now, and she was his. They fell into a rhythm that felt surprisingly domestic. Mornings over coffee discussing their days, evenings cooking together in the penthouse kitchen, nights wrapped around each other planning a future that got clearer and more tangible every day. Victor showed her his architectural sketches, and she encouraged him to pursue it, to actually build something with his own hands. She introduced him to her mother, who was predictably wary but charmed, despite herself, by Victor's old-fashioned courtesy and obvious devotion to her daughter. 6 months after that night in Red Hook, Victor took Lena to the property upstate where she'd hidden during the crisis. But this time there were no guards, no tactical teams. Just the two of them, and a bottle of wine, and the mountain sunset painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. "I bought this place because it reminded me of safety," Victor said as they sat on the porch overlooking the valley. "My mother brought me here when I was young, before my father's violence became too much, and she fled back to Italy. It was the last place I remember being truly happy." "It's beautiful," Lena said, leaning against his shoulder. "I want to build here, actually design and build something, like you suggested." Victor pulled out his phone and showed her renderings he'd been working on. A house that blended into the landscape, modern but warm, with big windows and natural materials. "I want it to be ours." A place we can escape to when the city gets too loud, too complicated. A place where we can raise a family someday, if that's something you want. Lena's breath caught. You're talking about the future. Our future. I'm talking about forever. Victor set down the phone and took both her hands in his. I know we started this in the most insane way possible. A dare, a kiss, a week of absolute chaos. But somewhere in all that madness, I found the thing I didn't know I was looking for. You, Lena, you're it for me. He pulled out a small velvet box and Lena's heart stopped. The ring inside was stunning. A sapphire surrounded by diamonds, unique and beautiful and somehow perfect. I'm not going to pretend I'm a good man or that my life isn't complicated, Victor said, his dark eyes holding hers. I'm still working on going fully legitimate, still dealing with the consequences of my past. But I'm trying to be better, to build something worth having, and I want to build it with you. Marry me, Lena. Choose me, choose this life, choose us, every day for the rest of our lives. Lena felt tears streaming down her face, but she was smiling, laughing, throwing her arms around him and saying yes before he'd even finished asking. Victor slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her with the kind of desperate joy that spoke of second chances and new beginnings, and love that had survived impossible odds. They were married 6 months later in a small ceremony at the upstate property, surrounded by the people who mattered. Lena's mother crying happy tears, Marcus and Rachel standing as witnesses, a handful of Victor's most trusted people who'd become something like family. The construction had already begun on their house, Victor's architectural vision slowly taking shape, and Lena loved standing in the skeleton of what would become their home and imagining their future there. She finished her degree while Victor continued transforming his empire, the two of them balancing her education with his business, her friends with his family obligations, their separate lives gradually weaving into something shared and solid. It wasn't always easy. There were late nights when Victor came home exhausted from negotiations. Days when Lena felt overwhelmed by the weight of being married to someone so powerful and scrutinized. But they worked through it together, learning each other's rhythms, building trust brick by brick. 2 years after that first kiss, Lena stood in the completed house, their house, with her hand on her swollen belly and watched Victor pace the room assembling a crib with intense concentration. He'd officially gone fully legitimate 6 months ago, selling off the last of his criminal enterprises and emerging as one of New York's most successful real estate developers and investors. The transition hadn't been seamless, but it had been real, and Lena was proud of him for choosing the harder path. "You're staring at me," Victor said without looking up from the instructions. "I'm appreciating you. There's a difference." Lena moved to his side, running her hands through his hair. "Remember when you told me that first night that entering your world meant protection and danger and no half measures? I remember everything about that night. Did you ever imagine it would turn into this? Marriage, a baby on the way, a life that's actually legitimate and happy?" Victor set down the screwdriver and pulled her carefully into his arms, his hands splayed protectively over her belly. "Honestly? No. I thought I'd spend my life alone, focused on power and control, never letting anyone close enough to matter. And then you asked permission to kiss me and everything changed." "Best $50 I ever earned," Lena said with a smile. "Best dare I ever accepted." Victor kissed her softly. "You made me believe I could be more than my father's legacy, more than violence and fear. You made me want to build instead of destroy. Everything good in my life started with you, Lena. Everything." Their daughter was born on a spring morning, perfect and healthy, and squalling with impressive lung capacity. Victor cried when he held her for the first time, this dangerous man reduced to tears by something so small and precious. They named her Sophia, after his mother, and Lena watched her husband transform yet again into something softer, gentler, more human. Life settled into a new rhythm, one that involved sleepless nights and baby laughter and the chaos of new parenthood. Victor proved to be a devoted father, getting up for midnight feedings, changing diapers with the same focused intensity he brought to business deals, singing Italian lullabies he remembered from childhood. Lena had never loved him more than when she watched him cradle their daughter against his chest, this once feared mob boss completely undone by a tiny human who had him wrapped around her finger. They split their time between the city penthouse and the mountain house, finding balance between Victor's business obligations and their desire for privacy and normalcy. Marcus and Rachel remained part of their lives, but as friends now rather than guards, the threats that had once necessitated constant security finally faded into memory. On Sophia's first birthday, surrounded by family and friends in the mountain house they'd built together, Lena pulled Victor aside to the kitchen where they'd first talked about forever. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Giving up the power, the empire your father built, choosing this quiet life instead?" Victor looked out at the party, at their daughter being passed between doting grandparents, at Marcus making ridiculous faces to make her laugh, at Rachel teaching Lena's mother how to use the complicated coffee maker. He looked at the house he'd designed and built with his own hands, at the life they'd constructed from the ashes of his old world. "Not for a single second," he said, pulling Lena into his arms. "I thought power was everything. Control, fear, respect built on violence. But this," he gestured to the life around them. "This is what matters. You, Sophia, the family we're building. This is the empire worth having." Lena kissed him, tasting joy in wine and the bright promise of their future. "I love you, Victor Moretti." "I love you too, Lena Moretti. Thank you for taking that dare. Thank you for choosing me when every logical bone in your body should have run. Thank you for believing I could be better." "You were always better," Lena said softly. "You just needed someone to see it." They stood there together in the kitchen they'd designed, in the house they'd built, surrounded by the life they'd fought for and won. And Lena thought about that night at the party, about the champagne courage and the $50 dare and the kiss that had changed everything, about the dangerous man with dark eyes who'd promised her protection and danger and no half measures, who'd delivered on all of it and then somehow given her something more: safety, love, and a future she'd never dared to dream of. It had started with a dare and a kiss and absolute recklessness. It had survived danger and violence and impossible odds, and it had transformed into something real and lasting and worth every risk she'd taken. Lena Harper had gone to a party she didn't belong at, kissed a stranger for money, and ended up with everything she'd never known she wanted: a husband who loved her fiercely, a daughter who was their whole world, and a life built not on fear or power, but on the simple, revolutionary choice to be brave enough to love. It was messy and imperfect and absolutely extraordinary. And she wouldn't change a single moment of it. Not the dare, not the kiss, not the dangerous, beautiful, impossible love that had grown from that one reckless decision. It was, she thought, as Victor spun her around the kitchen while Sophia's laughter echoed from the other room, the best mistake she'd ever made. The kind of mistake that turned into destiny, that proved sometimes the most foolish choices led to the most incredible destinations. She'd dared to kiss a stranger, and in return, she'd found her home.